Oh, hello, beautiful people. How are we? Good morning to most of you. Good afternoon from the UK. And then good evening if you're in Australia, Asia, wherever. Do you know what I mean? Don't know where everyone's from. So lovely to see so many people here. Lovely comments in the chat. Jeez, you guys are keen. Look at that. Sarah P's here. She's always here. Always here. Sleeps in the streams, I think. So yeah, if you can hit that like button, notification bell and all that. It's all about free Zachariah Anderson today. All about Zach and Solomon today. Um, Solomon's just popped off for a second. We'll put him on screen now. Um, we got loads of links here, guys. We got loads of links. I think some of you know the links anyway, but it's lovely to see all of you here. Really appreciate you being here. Um, Hello to everyone. Jeez, and look at that. The signs are up in the chat already. Make sure you put the signs up in the chat, guys. We love it. Right. You're not here to see me. I know. You're not here to see me. It's all good. I still love all of you. It's all good. You know, the man of the moment that you're all here to see, he's just arrived back. He's a little bit under the weather, but we got him. He's going to be fantastic. He's going to be amazing. I've watched loads of his interviews and I'm highly impressed by him. I think he's very, very, very talented at this. So, without further ado, let's introduce him. And here he is, Solomon.
Hey
How are we,
everybody, how you
sir?
doing? Dylan?
Good. Oh, I'm trying to get this right. That's too. That was too close. That was. That was a bit
Yeah.
too much. That
Yeah,
was.
you can see all of my glaring age imperfections when you really zoom it in like that.
No, but yeah. How are you? You're not feeling the best, but we're still going to smash today. I know that.
Yeah, I'm feeling up to it at least. Even if my voice is, an octave deeper than it normally is because of this head cold. Our tiny baby, our actually 4-month-old today, he brought back a little sick from daycare, and so it's been, raging through the house like wildfire for the last week and settled in my chest on like Monday. So here we are, getting through it all.
Thank you. Well, I really appreciate being here. I know I'm the opposite of you. I'm actually starting to become ill, so it's like brilliant. Well,
Yeah,
anyway, we're gonna smash it wherever happens. And also, it's not just the two of us though. It's chat. Chat is gonna get us through this because
yeah,
if they're quiet, then it's not gonna work. They need to be chirpy, shouting, not abusive in the sense of each other. Just let's get on with it. I think they'll understand what I mean by a bit of abuse. Excuse me, just swallowed a little bit there. Once we get going, because everyone thinks we're doing an interview sort, but we're not really doing an interview. We're doing slightly different. Um, I'm not sure if you want to touch base on and explain what we're actually doing today. I'm glad that you're allowing us to do this.
so today we're thank you, love. Today we're going to be breaking down. Jen just brought me some tea. Uh,
Thanks,
for those
Jen.
for those of you that are tea drinkers, I know that from across the pond, it's proper to have tea.
It
Uh,
is.
but just some tea to help me in case I get a little raspy or whatever. Um, so today we're going to be covering the closing arguments by the prosecution. So we're going to be hammering out, Michael Gravely's statements, and we're going to preface it with a couple of things to put it into perspective for a lot of people that don't follow legalese. We've got some things that outline why it's so completely egregious that he presented the case like he did during the closing arguments. There is a legal basis for closing arguments. They are technically an opinion expressed by the person who's filed the motion, whether it be the state or someone against the state. So it sort of layers in the motion, whoever filed the motion with the state, the rebuttal for the respondent, so the petitioner, the respondent, and then in the case of a criminal trial, we actually have a rebuttal to the response. So you have petitioner, the respondent, and then petitioner again gets to rebut the statements of the respondent. So in a case like this, we have the situation where the state is the prosecutor, the petitioner. The state in Zach's case had Michael Gravely make a statement, and then Jessica Kruzarek make a rebuttal statement afterwards, and that was the end of the trial. But it's really important. Jessica's statement is only about 15 minutes long, and I think that there were a couple of untruths in that, but there wasn't much that she said other than he's guilty, and slapped herself in her face with her notepad. But there are some really important aspects of the law in how they're supposed to present their opinion and whether it's supposed to be based in the facts presented in the trial. Now, the American Bar Association does stipulate a few things in here. Let's see. So what you pulled up is the Wisconsin Office of Lawyer Representation. So the OLR, or lawyer regulation. So I'd sent you an American Bar Association link prior to
Yeah.
that as well. The American Bar Association link specifically talks about the closing argument. Um, so just because it's referenced as an ABA article here, do you have that link too?
2 secs. I do. I do. Hang on. Right, hang on.
So
Uh,
it's how the courts work. Uh,
I was too keen. Here we go. I got it. Yeah.
you
Right.
got it? All right. I was going to pull it
Yeah.
up if you didn't.
No, I got it. It just need to share it on screen now. There you go.
So in this, it very specifically outlines that the closing arguments or summations discuss the evidence and properly drawn inferences. So this is a really important thing. They cannot talk about issues outside the case or evidence that was not presented. So it's something to keep in mind as we delve further into this. So the judge usually indicates lawyers before closing, blah, 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 lawyer, the plaintiff, the government, sums up comments and evidence. So that what they do is they sum up what was presented favorable to their side. Now that does require that it is founded in evidence presented in the courtroom. So there are some issues that, for those of you that are familiar with Wisconsin versus Zachariah Anderson, that this is a very important aspect because the plaintiff or government has the burden of proof. The lawyer from that side is entitled to make the concluding argument. So that is called the rebuttal. So as I had just talked about, it's an important aspect of this that um, that the defense doesn't get to counter the rebuttal afterwards. It's just those three stages. That is plain as day, effectively what they talk about here. But the fact that the plaintiff, especially in the case, a criminal case where the government is the plaintiff, in this situation, the government has a burden of summing up the evidence presented. So as we watch the closing argument, for those of you that are very familiar with the trial, it's really important for you to also keep in mind and flag all of those moments that he specifically makes things up that were not presented in evidence, and that he just outright lies about. So so there are multiple. It's not just a mischaracterization of fact. It is absolute false information presented, which is what brings us to the Wisconsin Office of Lawyer Regulation. The other things that I sent you, those screenshots.
You tested me out here. Fair play to you. My skill sets here. But I'd rather do my side than have to speak as much as you do. So fair play. Hang on, got it. Share screen. Oops. Which one? Do you just want the bottom part?
Yeah, the ABA comment. So the
Yeah.
misrepresentation, statements of fact. So we have this that they have to inform of relevant facts, that in Wisconsin state, that any statement or of another person the lawyer knows is false. So in this situation, it very clearly defines the misrepresentation. So when the lawyer is aware that they're making false claims, so dishonest conduct is about a false statement for misrepresentations by a lawyer in the case. So the Office of Lawyer Regulation in Wisconsin actually further continues to define this. Now, I had sent you. Let's see if I can find because I was breezing through this. On the next page, we
Yeah, I
have
got you.
um, false
I got
assertion of
you.
fact,
Yeah, I got it.
the
Um,
annotation.
Annotations, got it. Present, share screen. People say men can't multitask. Look at us. We're a team.
I mean, I had at least pieced this whole stream of consciousness thought together before sitting down. So I knew that it was important to point out all of these things in the annotations here. False assertions of fact, false assertions of material fact to third parties violate subparagraph blank. Um, uh, Representing an opposing party that the lawyer represented the person that they have never met in person when the person not agreed representation. So in this situation where the state is not representing Zach, they are falsely asserting facts in the case in Wisconsin precedents. This is really, really important because the closing argument is really what sealed the deal for a lot of people because most people were just confused. There was a lot of crap that was just kind of thrown out into the wind. I was reading some more issues that had to do with um, the legal representation or the presentation of other acts evidence and things like that, and why the whole diatribe, the whole argument about marijuana was completely there as a prejudicial statement of fact. But I digress. In this, let's see, where was I? The lawyer. Let's see, appeal depending when the appeal is included in affirmative court order, disciplinary against the fund, funds distributed falsely telling the party funds have not been received later. The funds they cite an example, deny the opposing counsel that the lawyer has a romantic relationship with the client. So they cite a bunch of examples on that, and then they have failure to disclose material fact right below that, which is um, why the first trial was called a mistrial. So there was a failure to disclose material fact in that, and in the first mistrial, Michael Gravely had inserted himself as a witness to the change in testimony, which was material fact evidence, which is why they called a mistrial in the first case. So in this, not only do we have in the Office of Lawyer Regulation, we have one violation in the first mistrial, a failure to disclose material fact. It automatically ended up being called a mistrial in that first trial because he had violated the ethics of his position as a prosecutor in the state of Wisconsin, but also that, as we're about to discuss, a false representation of fact that had transpired during the closing arguments. All of this stuff, for those of you that aren't lawyers, very important things for appealing to the state of Wisconsin and writing our letters to uh, the Office of Lawyer Regulation. These are very, very important for people to wrap their minds around why this is such a problem. Um, so yes, it can be, some of it can be brought up on the appeal, um, specifically because of the misrepresentations. But we need to be able to file motions against Michael Gravely with the Office of Lawyer Representation. It's important to put him on notice that people are paying attention to his misconduct. We need to hold our prosecutors accountable. Not every state has it exactly worded like Wisconsin does, but for those of you that are Wisconsin residents, those of you that are paying attention to this case and cases that may be similar to this, when when prosecutors in the state of Wisconsin falsely represent fact, when they in a closing argument make fabricate things. It's not inferred during the trial. Things that are not inferred during the trial, like the pulling of a knife and citing of the murder weapons and things like that that Michael Gravely did. These are things that were not inferred. I mean that this is an issue that we have with the presentation. Now they're going to make the argument that Marquand Washington in his definitely not coached statement, said that he had stabbed Marquand, or that Zach had stabbed Rosario Gutierrez, which is where the knife came into play. But he specifically makes up this tale of the surprise attack, which was not ever discussed. They cite this intense degree of planning multiple times, which was not ever presented, and here we are. So let's break it down, shall we?
Yeah, we will. Before we break it down, let's give you a little bit of a break as well, because you've just been chatting there. That's really interesting. I'm glad you sent that because I didn't know. Um, just so you know, behind every great man is a great woman. And I just want to make sure that Jen actually gets a good shout out from the start because not just Jen, but there's a lot of people that put a lot of effort, a lot of work on the website, on Discord, Facebook, everything. I know that a hell of a lot of work goes into it. So you are the face of it, sort of, but there's so many great people that are involved in this whole thing, and so I really want to give them a shout out. I know that Jen, she posts stuff all the time. She writes up all the things, all the letters and everything from Zach. She's very involved on the website. So shout out to Jen. Shout out to everyone else as well.
I mean, Jen
Um,
spent, I mean, 100+ hours on the website in typing in journals, rewording things, organizing it, making it user friendly. There's been so much work that she's put into the website. I would be adrift, without her here, making sure that things actually get done.
yeah,
So absolutely, Jen gets the first shout out. I do want to give Ashley, Josie, Marguline, Alicia, Emily, all of these wonderful ladies, and David, from MLS, Chandler, all of these people that have put in so much time. Jeff from Legal Vices, all of them that have continued to dig and churn into this case. Even David from Viva Fry just mentioned Zach's case in an interview with Megan Kelly just the other day. People really see this case for what it is, and they're going to bat for us. And to their credit, they're putting their own integrity out there by citing our case as well. They're putting their name behind us when they talk about it, and I appreciate that Jeff says that I can't say unequivocally that Zach did not commit this. I wasn't there. I didn't see it personally to know that he was just asleep in his house. But I can tell you that the evidence presented in the courtroom and the way it was presented should not ever result in a guilty verdict, because we as citizens should hold our courts to a higher degree of certainty, a higher degree of proof to lock someone up for their entire life. We as citizens need to hold our judiciary accountable for the power that they have. And I've cited Lord Acton's other quote, because he's got the quote that says absolute power, corrupts absolutely. But he also has the quote that anywhere that there's a locus of power, a focus or a location where power is collected, men with the mentality of mobsters will gather. And it appears to us that that is exactly how prosecutors, not just in Wisconsin, but in states all over the United States, have been approaching and doing business. They go in with the mentality that the conviction is paramount, that they're really just there to put people away. but that's not what they're there for, and they've actually completely corrupted the intent of their office, and we need to really hold them as citizens accountable for that. Yet, Jen points out Alexis did work with us to set up the website. It didn't go exactly how we had planned, but we worked it out. She put in I think 30 hours or something like that of her own time. Setting up the initial design and organization, and really working super hard on getting that website up and running, and then Crystal as well, working with Alexis to try and make that happen. So thank you. Those two people slipped my mind. They deserve proper respect and gratitude for their time, energy, their financial contributions and effort. So thank you very much for that. And everyone that's dug through and pulled out transcripts of the trial that are posted on our Discord. There are a lot more than just the people in the Discord. There are a tremendous amount of people in the Facebook group that did that as well. So just thank you, thank you all for your time, your effort, and your support.
I'm glad I wanted to cover that at the start because I think every time we stream stuff, we always thank people at the end, and it's mostly rushed at the end. So I know there's a hell of a lot of people that support you, support Zach, and everything. So I just want to get that in. So thank you so much for spending time on that. They deserve a shout out. And very quickly before we go to the video, people are asking what the signs mean and stuff like that. Oops.
So this is American Sign Language for "I love you," um, right here.
Yeah,
So that is yep, exactly. So that is very specifically. It's something that Zach had established with his twin boys. I've talked about this a little bit in other streams, but because Sadie is fluent in ASL, uh, they would sign to the kids when they were really, not conversational. When they were still very small, they could understand spoken word, but they weren't able to articulate well. So they would do basic sign. So the kids learn to communicate through sign faster than actually vocalizing. That's just part of brain development. Um, so the "I love you" came from that. Zach had signed to one of the boys, uh, and uh, and he walked over and he touched fingertips with Zach, and he held up the other one to the other because they're twin boys, and then
amazing.
the other one ran walked up and touched fingertips too. So that moment, kind of cemented it for him, and because of his you know rough familiarity, he's not fluent by any means. It was important that he understood, even when he wasn't allowed to speak with any of us, that he could express "I love you," uh, to his family, to his children, and then we could express it back. So that's where that is really grounded in, because with so many years that we weren't even to talk to him, it was almost 2 years. It was, I think, 23 months before they released the gag order on Josh and me being able to talk to him, and then it was after trials. It was 3 years before, I think 34 months before they allowed him to even reach out to his daughter in any capacity. So, or the boys. So just for those of you that are parents out there, to really put it into perspective, think about being forcefully removed from your children's lives who you love dearly, for 3 years, and how much emotional and psychological toll that would put on you. Um, so that's why it's important. That's why "I love you" is important.
Yeah, that's a great explanation as well. Again, you do it justice more than I would anyway. For those that are worried here, right? Yes, the stream is a lot more intelligent with Sol on it, right? But it's balanced out. I'm here. This is the whole thing. Intelligence that way, than me right here. So between us, it'll be you will understand the stream, all right? So don't worry. They're not used to all this. So honestly, you're Oh, except for when Sal's here. Salvador, when he's here, his IQ it goes up. So when you're here, it goes up. But don't worry. Um, right, we will play the video now. As I try and get it up. So my point of view on this case was, I always had him as not guilty for murder. Um, but I did say in the moment I could see him maybe being guilty for stalking.
Mhm.
Now, the reason I said that was because I think we'll find it in this closing argument. Because looking back, the amount of lies, in my opinion, the DA said made it look out that or sound like he did have this tendency of stalking. It's only since listening to your interviews and you pointing out all these various things that I was like, well, actually, no, it's not. So in real time now, I feel he's innocent for everything. But in the moment, I was like, okay, sure, if you're going to see him guilty for something, stalking, whatever, it's no big deal. Who cares? For murder, nothing. I can't see anything for murders. So that's where I was coming from until I started, looking into the whole thing myself. So just just so I'm being honest, where I'm coming from as well on that. Um, in terms of this video, right? Just so you guys know, we are going in raw with this. We're going in cold. I have not watched this. Sol has not watched it. It's going to be painful to listen to this prick speak, right? But we will be stopping it along the way just to explain. I'll ask Sol some
Hey,
questions.
Dylan, 1 second. Zach's calling. I'm going to hand my phone off to Jen
Yeah,
so she can talk to him. So I'm just going to pop off
no
cam
worries,
right
mate.
for a second.
No worries. So I'll bring him off because we don't need to hear. I'll mute him so we don't need to hear his conversation. But obviously, I'm sure he will say hi to Zach on your behalf, guys. Um, so yeah, we're going in cold on this, right, guys? So just in case you think, oh my god, have they not prepped? No, we deliberately went into this cold because we wanted to make sure that we gave you a proper reaction. Um, I started looking at it for first 5 minutes, and I had to stop it every 20 to 30 seconds. So I've got lots of questions for Sol. Oh, hang on. I did mute you as well,
Sorry,
just in
that
case,
was
but
just Zach just
that was great
had
timing.
called me, and I haven't talked to him for a few days, so I wanted to make sure that whatever messages that he had for me that we got collected because it's hard. I can't call Zach. The way the prison system works here is that he has to call out, or I have to be an approved person. So we submit documents to the prison that need to be background checked and double checked or whatever they do to confirm and allow us to be able to set up a visitation with him in any capacity, in person or video visit at all, unless you're his legal representation. And otherwise we have to wait for him to call, and then that's a collect call for him to either spend his own money or spend our money to contact us, and then he only gets uh, two 15-minute calls basically every other day with one longer call on the weekend, and that's it. That's all he gets. Other than that, he's in a facility called Boscobel. It's a max security facility, and he has his own cell, and he's in his cell 23 hours a day. Basically, he has yard time like every other day or 2 days a week. He gets to be out in the yard for exercise. Other than that, he's in a tiny concrete box with a bed and a toilet sink because it's like one unit mounted to the wall with no outlet in the room. There's a hole in the wall where he has to hand things out to guards for them to plug in, and a shower head that they only turn on every like third day. So he gets like 2 showers a week, and that's it. Um, so that's he's not in the hole. He's in his own cell. This is might seem like it's a punishment, but this is how they run this facility. This facility was set up for people that didn't get along with other people, like the gentleman that killed Jeffrey Dahmer was sent here. So people that are violent offenders and that have issues getting along with other inmates are usually sent to this facility. But Zach had 3 years of people going through his discovery, stealing his belongings in the jail and in the other prison facility, and he was over it. So he opted for this facility. Either way, just so you're all aware of that, his journals reflect his frustration with the system, his frustration with how they treat inmates. It's pretty rough, and that's on the freezachariahanderson.org. We actually post journal entries that he sends us, and you'll be able to get kind of a really really in-depth, all-encompassing view, an immersive view on his experience. And it's not sunshine and rose petals. Like, some people believe that prison is like easy in the States. It's not. It's he's not in a white collar prison. He's not one where he has work release. It's not like that at all. So just so you're all aware, and on that note, I did also see someone ask how the appeal is going. So he filed notice of appeal. That was right at the end of the trial, and that was his current representation. That was with Birdsall Bear, with Nicole Muller. They filed notice of appeal, and from that notice of appeal, he has 1 year to acquire his appellate representation, and then to submit his appellate brief to the court. So we have 1 year from that time to get our resources together, to submit the appellate brief, and to start taking action on this. And as some of you are painfully aware, this requires money. We need to be able to get experts set up. We need to be able to get reevaluation of DNA evidence, and so many other things. All of this requires money, and that's where the Give Send Go comes in. Just every $30,000 is a drop in the bucket. That's we're talking about $200,000, potentially, for his appellate representation and everything that we have to do for this issue. So just to be clear, like, 30 grand, amazing progress. Thank you all so much for your contribution. Thank you for donating and believing in the cause. Thank you for putting dollars behind Zach's appeal. We're like, 7% of the way there, maybe 6%, right? So we have so much more to go. So just to keep that in mind, that we need that much more. Okay. Um, so
Happy
yep,
days.
please keep donating. Buying the swag is another way to help us out. If you want to have T-shirts or other swag, the all the links are on the website. You can go there and help us that way, because all profits from buying the swag get put right in the Give Send Go.
Yeah, that's great. And we got Sarah's on the mods. We got that pinned to the top, guys. So just go to the website. Everything's there. All the links, everything's there. So just go there. Right. We will start this. I should explain to everyone, we go into this absolutely cold. So I know that I got some questions coming up already for you. But then whenever you're ready to stop at any point, so just score, just start speaking, and then we'll pause it and stuff like that. So yeah, right. This could be hard, but you know, this guy, the judge, I do not like him, but we're not here for him. We're here for the DA. So we'll start here, and then let's go. Oh, here we go. Hang on, before we go, I told about intelligence IQ. We're through the roof right now. Sal's here as well, so amazing. Hi, Sal. Hope you're well, my friend.
With
So here we go.
that, Mr. Gravely, you have the floor.
Thank you. Your Honor, counsels, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I just want to please start by expressing, without really having the words for it, the gratitude that I think we all feel for your service on this case. I mean, so many weeks, way beyond what you were expected to do. So just as simply as I can, please let me just be part of expressing my just profound gratitude for your
He
time
strokes their ego.
consideration on this
Yeah.
case. I want to start with just a couple of housekeeping things about the charges, and then I'm going to get into the crux of the argument. A couple of the charges are stalking offenses, probably not something you think about all the
Are we
time.
on 1.25?
No. Do you want to
It
be
might.
on 1.25?
It might help. We can slow it down if it's too much, but
Yeah, I know. I am aware we've got a deadline, but even if we don't finish it, we will. Don't worry, guys. We're not going to rush through it and not cover everything. But we have got a deadline. Saul's got to work this evening, so or this afternoon.
Two or more things happening. So a course of conduct where two or more things are done by the defendant. We're talking in our stalking allegations today about the April 24th peek-in, using his daughter as one of the peek-ins over at Sadie's place. The planting of a phone to track her on May 8th. Again, peeking in or listening in on May 13th at Rosalio Gutierrez's place. And then, of course, the homicide committed on May 17th. So we're asking the court, you guys, to consider all of those things as acts of stalking, as well as the emails sent and the text sent, the communications, the recordings of Sadie Beecham as well. So what needs to happen for stalking is you need to have an impact that a reasonable person would have, and it's called, the part that we care about is suffering serious emotional distress, which means that you have to feel harassed or tormented, that a reasonable person has to feel that. The stalking statute also requires that the individual involved, the person who is suffering.
Oddly enough, here's our first misrepresentation.
Yeah.
So it is serious emotional distress at the time of the acts. So he already misrepresents that. I mean, he's making a case already that he's claiming that the phone was planted and things like that. That's what he's claiming. There is a counter argument to that, but that was presented. However, serious emotional distress. This is an interesting thing because to my understanding, the way the law is written, it is serious emotional distress during the time, like during the time period in question, which is not what he states. He just says that they blanket experienced extreme emotional distress. And this is a nuanced thing for those of you out there, a difference between it. Lawyers base everything on these little pieces of nuance. In general, saying that Sadie experienced some extreme emotional distress, I believe that she did at some point experience some extreme emotional distress because of this case. Whether or not she was at the time is a totally different conversation, right? So for those of you out there that heard that and they're like, well, yeah, she experienced extreme emotional distress. I mean, was she terrified that Zach would get off and then sue her and take the children away because she lied to get custody? Probably. I believe that she was terrified of that consequence because him walking out of that courtroom as a free man was something that I'm sure completely mortified her. I bet she was terrified. But does that mean that she was terrified of him at the time that these instances occurred or when she had learned of them? Well, no, she wasn't. That there is a difference. Anyway, carry on.
No, I hadn't thought about that, so thank you for that. That's a lot. Yeah, I glossed over that, to be honest. I didn't even think about that. I got questions about the stalking, but that's coming up, so I won't ask them here. But I have got some questions.
Serious emotional distress. In other words, personally feel that they have been harassed or tormented. And you heard in the texts and some of the discussions, both Rosalio and Sadie wrestle with the consequences of this, right? Talking about it. Sadie has a text where she says, I hope this, doesn't mean that you will, want to end this relationship because of this harassment. At points, Rosalio is trying to be comforting to her. At points, he is feeling aggressive, right? I'd like to go break this guy's legs. What's his address? The kind of human emotions that people have in response to feeling like their personal liberty, their space, everything that they sort of care about in their privacy is being compromised by this other person. And so those are the emotions that both you heard expressed in the text messages from both Rosalio and Sadie, and the question of what a reasonable person would think about that. Another just small housekeeping along those lines is hiding a corpse. We're suggesting to you that when Rosalio Gutierrez is murdered on the 17th at around 10 p.m., the
Suggesting.
placement of his body in
We're
the
suggesting. They didn't have proof of that at all. So this is an interesting thing. He suggests that it happens. So a suggestion again, legalese. Here we go. We're driving down that dirty alley of legalese. He is suggesting, which means that by it being a suggestion, he did not use it as a statement of fact. He did not at any point empirically represent that Rosario Gutierrez's body was moved and hidden by Zach. There was no proof of that. But what he has to do is suggest. And the suggestion alone should, to anyone out there who's ever a juror, if you have a prosecutor suggesting, that is already a statement of doubt because it wasn't presented. So I think this is an important game for us to play because we know, those of us that watch the trial, that there are a bunch of maybes coming in. There's a lot of maybes and what ifs. And I suggest, can we start counting all of these things? So, the chat, all of you in chat, let's start counting every time he suggests, every time he says maybe, every time that he casts doubt on his own argument. It's really important because in our nation we must prove beyond reasonable doubt that the accused had committed the crimes that they are being arrested and held in jail or prison for.
Fine. If the chat could do that, happy days. I'm sure they will. They're well trained. Right.
defendant's minivan is the beginning of a long stage of hiding a corpse. And so that is where that hiding a corpse begins in terms of our allegations to present to you today. So I want to first cover this idea that there are two separate but combined sets of facts that allow you to know that there is proof beyond reasonable doubt that Rosalio Gutierrez was murdered on May 17th, 2020 at around 10 p.m., just around 10 p.m. at his own apartment. And I say that because there are two things that happen. One, there is a bloody, bloody scene. A scene that has pools of blood that I'm going to talk about a little more in a second. But also, there are the circumstances of Rosalio Gutierrez's absence from the life of everyone he cared about and who cares about him. Rosalio's phone shows he gets home at about 9:08 p.m. He's just dropped his kids off back at their mom's. He's expecting Neridia Macias. Her last text to him is at 9:37 p.m., and that text is never answered. She stays at the apartment building. Remember, she's at the wrong building. She doesn't see what is happening. But she stays for about a little more than a half hour.
That's not
She's
the
texting
last
and
text
calling.
that she sent him. Her last text was at about 10:10, and she said, "I'm leaving," something along those lines at about that time. So again, another important thing, he just lied. He just misrepresented fact. So 9:37, she's wondering why he's not answering, and then at 10:10, she waits around for a half hour. She then texts him and says, "All right, I'm leaving." That was not the last message that she sent him. So already a lie, already misrepresentation of the facts in the case. So we're starting out strong, right? Not only are we casting doubt on our own argument for the charges waylaid against my brother, but we've already also started to lie to the jury. So this is an absolute misrepresentation of fact, uh, without a doubt. The evidence presented, you can find that the text message exchange on freezachariahanderson.org. That exchange already, not what he just represented in the courtroom.
Because I'm just going to backtrack a second there as well, because I don't know when to stop all these things. So one of the things that I wanted to bring up as well, which I'm looking forward to seeing him explain a bit further along, is this bloody, bloody scene, pools of blood. I can't wait to understand how, you know, what happened to that, because I know you're not tuned into the Brian Kohlberger case, but an ex-FBI agent said that no matter how much blood there is, there's always be lots of blood left in any scene. So if he's dragging the corpse into his minivan, which I believe a minivan's quite short, so I'm not sure how he's fitted a corpse into that minivan, but that's for further along. Um, but there's gonna be loads of blood everywhere. So I can't wait for him to explain that. But
I
we
mean,
know he's not
the
gonna
only
be
way
able
for
to
there
do
to
that.
not be blood dripped, sprayed, splashed is either that Rosario Gutierrez had to lay there long enough for it to coagulate, to congeal, right? So
Mhm,
the wounds that he most likely eventually succumbed to would have had to have stopped bleeding, and that could have been because his heart stopped, and then it coagulated and stuck, so he stopped bleeding, or it was staunched, and pressure was held, and he stopped bleeding and walked out of his own power. Uh, Both of those are possibilities because they never proved that he was dead, which is an interesting thing because he says even in this that well he's dead to people that knew him already. So he just stated that. Later he'll contradict that, but it's important to recognize that he is already setting this foundation. Well, he's missing to everyone that knows him. He hasn't been communicated to with or been communicating with anyone that cares about him, anyone that he talked to or spoke to regularly, including his own children and his mother, who he talked to all the time. This is important because, I mean, for those of you that aren't aware, the Kenosha PD had released about 5 weeks before they charged Zach with homicide a press statement that specifically cited that they did not have the evidence to determine that Rosario Gutierrez was indeed dead and that he would remain a missing person and this would probably be a cold case. That is an interesting statement by Kenosha PD because they had all of the evidence at that point. Everything that they collected was already in their control, and they had been able to go through it all to the point where the amount of blood, the volume of blood that he just described in the apartment was not enough to determine death by any medical examiner or expert. So, it I mean, there's a real question. Was it because the KPD is really just that incompetent where they didn't even think about bringing someone in to determine death, or was it a situation where they absolutely just didn't have the information? They didn't have enough evidence to prove it. Either way is completely damning for their case. They didn't have enough information. They didn't seek out the information to determine. And that's something that I would hope that everyone in Rosalio's family and friends, his support group, would those are real questions that they should be raising with KPD and local officials. Why wasn't this determined? Why was there not an expert brought in? There was a press release that Michael Gravely just did just a few weeks ago where he bragged about how much money they saved by using, the state crime lab and resources available to them without hiring experts to convict my brother. He bragged about it. But they never brought in an expert to determine the death of Rosario Gutierrez. They never even consulted with one to bring them in. That in itself is a glaring red flag to all of us as to the ineptitudes and the underhanded game that they tried to play here to try and convict my brother without bringing in proper testimony. So just as a side note, here he makes a statement of fact that he's covering his own ass. He's doing this thing where he's saying that he's dead to everyone that he knew, and then we'll see later. I'll stop you when we get to that point.
it's fine. There's a lot of points, for it. But Zenith's here. Hello, Zenith. Welcome. Right.
calling, essentially expressing to him, I'm here, what's going on? And none of those are answered. None of those are viewed. So at this point, from 9:37 on, Rosalio Gutierrez is no longer answering anyone who is concerned about him or interested in him or who care about him in his life. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we are 1,039 days later. And what I just described to you is still the circumstance today. Rosalio loved his kids. He loved his mom, who he was in communication with as a guy almost 40 or around 40 every day. Every day he was in communication with his mom. And that suddenly ended.
That was never proven in the courtroom either. So he says every day he talked to his mother. They never actually presented that it was every day. They said often, but every day. I mean, I'm close with a lot of people, but the only person that I talk to every day is Jen, right? Like that doesn't even make sense. So every day seems like a stretch.
I mean, I think the whole thing's a stretch, to be quite honest with you. I fair play to you as well, because his voice is grating on me. So if it's grating on me, it must be grating on you. So I appreciate you doing this.
Just around 10 p.m. on May 17th. He planned and proudly was ready to coach his promising son in baseball. And he never got a chance to do that. He had a summer camp scheduled for him and his children called, and it's a summer camp that's common for folks in Kenosha. And that summer camp was already planned. It's in his calendar, and that never occurred on the 19th of May. He no longer attended any of the holidays or events or visits. He no longer had any experiences with his children. He was a father whose daughter had a little love note to dad on the pillow when she left. He was a father whose son shared his love of baseball and emulated him in every way he could in that love. And all of that has been gone for every day since May 17th, 2020. So combined with that bloody scene, you as a jury know he was murdered. You know that because those two things together show you that he is gone. So you know that there is a quantity of blood and a magnitude of blood in this case, which certainly tells that story. There is blood pooled on the floor by the couch. There's blood pooled on the couch itself. There's blood sprayed on wall after wall and on the ceiling in multiple areas and on almost every surface of his main room and the hallway by his door. There is a quantity and magnitude of blood which is absolutely consistent with Rosalio Gutierrez being murdered there at his own apartment. And every bit of that blood that's been tested in those different areas all come
He just
back
inserted
to
himself
DNA.
as an expert. A quantity and magnitude that indicates that he was murdered. He inserted himself as an expert to determine that Rosalio was murdered based on the quantity and magnitude of blood. What credentials does Michael Gravely have to determine that? It's another piece of dishonesty, another piece that was not proven in the trial.
So no expert, because you got to forgive me, I don't remember the whole trial, obviously, but no expert in the trial said what he just said, is what you're saying.
Nope. They did not bring in an expert to determine the volume of blood, the quantity and magnitude of blood loss was absolutely indicative of death. No one ever said that. So that in itself, he made himself an expert by saying that. No expert testified to that. That was not presented in the trial, that the quantity and magnitude of blood loss in that apartment was indicative of death. Moreover, it's also verified that just like I said, 5 weeks before they charged Zach with murder, with homicide, one of the KPD officers even stated himself that there wasn't enough to determine death and that he was just a missing person.
Because that's my question to you now as well, because if there was that much blood and blood splatter and everything, obviously it goes on people. I get that bit. But trajectories and all, they've got so much science now. They've got so much things to look at. Like they can, well, apparently they can pick up all these things. So if whoever it was, so say if he was murdered, surely the splatter will be on that person, and it will go on the walls or go on wherever. But there's a pattern. So they should, in theory, be able to work out height, potentially weight, what shoe size, if there's lots of blood on the floor, all those things, how close this person was to shoot him, stuff. They do all those things, but there was nothing. There was no testimony. There was no evidence. There was no experts. There was nothing presented about any of this,
Well, there was
as far as I'm
Officer Van
concerned.
Wee,
Right?
who attended a 40-hour course after.
Well,
So Van Wee processed this crime scene and then later took a 40-hour course to verify that he could be a blood pattern expert. And they used that course to say that, consistent with his experience in the courtroom and the fact that he took this 40-hour course, made him a blood pattern expert. And this is why, the discussion of trigonometry and all this stuff, like that, it became kind of a commentary in the courtroom, is because trigonometry would be used for vector analysis on where blood is being shot to, and
yeah,
how that blood would land and how it would splatter, and the directionality of the blood as it would hit, and then the droplet would go in a certain direction, how much force it would take to create that pattern. And so blood blood spatter analysis uses those sort of mathematical principles to determine where the source of that injury is, and how much force was behind it to send the blood flying in a certain direction, spraying, splattering out, or whatever it might be.
yeah.
Those pattern analyses do require that level of mathematical comprehension, and that is why those conversations occur in the courtroom. And so it was almost laughable that they put Van Wee up as their blood spatter expert, when during the processing of the crime scene and in all of his crime scene analyses that he didn't have blood spatter analysis as a credential or the education to understand what he was doing wrong when he processed the crime scene at all, which goes hand in hand with the ineptitude of Kenosha PD in processing and following through on the processing of this crime scene, and then a CYA act by the KPD and the prosecutor's office to try and get him credentialed before they saw this trial.
It's unbelievable. There's a lot of people here, right, in chat that have asked this question. I was going to leave it to the end, but I think it's more fitting here. Is why did the defense not object in any of these places about, he's testifying for himself and things like that? Was there a reason or anything? Do you know
Dylan, I
what?
wish I knew. I wish
Yeah.
I knew. I had a very similar conversation with his lawyers following the trial. uh, why didn't you object? And I haven't gotten an answer about that, for
Yeah.
their legal strategy. But um, there's some things that bother me quite a bit about how that was handled. And I wasn't the lion tamer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's easier to be on the outside of the box looking in, picking those moments out, and for all the time that we've had after the trial, re-breaking down every bit of this. But I think that there were some objectionable statements that were made in here, um, that should have been objected to, but weren't. And that's just my opinion, and that's the way it is.
Yeah, but yeah. I mean, we can all be frustrated here, but yeah, I mean, I think you're very the way you say all these things is in a nice way, very controlled way. I don't think I'd be quite as controlled, as or as composed as you are in this situation. And I'm only learning about some of these things. Um, and my blood pressure's going up a little bit just learning some of these things right now. So I can only imagine what you as family are going through with it. So, yeah, right. Let's go through it again.
of
What's
Mr.
next?
Gutierrez
Well,
himself.
what's the next lie this prick's got?
So that quantity of blood and his absence from any contact, any social media, any financial records, any of the people who care about him, any phones, any in-person contact, all of that is gone over those 1,039 days. And so we know and can say as a legal conclusion that a reasonable jury will find that he is murdered. The blood and his absence both tell us that story.
Or legal
So what
sidestepping,
else do we
that a
know
jury could
about
find that he was murdered. Not that we did,
We
right? Not that we, the state, could find. A legal sidestep on purpose. Carry on.
Jesus, man. I mean, I'm so glad we're doing this because I'm learning so much. Those intricacies I've not picked up on. That makes it even more bizarre, more corrupt, more infuriating. Oh, this is okay. Okay, let's see what
this
else.
crime based on the evidence that's been presented in
Motherfucker.
this case. And I want to suggest to you first that the next obvious and real conclusion is that this is a highly planned, thought out, and executed crime of murder. And so I want you to think about who there is in this case.
They never presented a
who
plan,
has shown
any
a
plan.
propensity-
They never presented evidence of a plan. They never presented anything that had to do with any plan. Nothing. Not a single piece of evidence. Not a single piece of evidence indicated that this was a highly planned event. Not a single one.
So, so what's he? So he's not basing this on anything. Like
Nothing.
obviously, as his brother is Zachariah. Is he actually a good planner? It doesn't matter, but is he that kind of guy that has got everything dotted down as a plan? Um, at all? Is that type of character he is, or is he like well
No,
most of us just
no. He's
blasé?
my brother is an agent of chaos. I wish
I
that
love that. I
I
love
mean,
that.
like, so I think there's some Jeff Goldblum quotes waiting to be had, some memes about Zach, about chaos theory with this, but because there's patterns in chaos, but it's sort of like the pattern of chaos is that he had a behavior that perpetuated chaos. He himself not a terribly organized man in any capacity. He's just not. He never has been. His mind is usually all over the place.
Yeah.
He's thinking about a million things and trying to weave them all together into one cohesive thought. And having any kind of argument with him usually is a downward spiral of stream of consciousness of things that have nothing to do with the situation at large. And uh, and it's really frustrating actually to be his brother and to get into a disagreement with him, but the reality is that he doesn't think like that, not logically, not like start to finish. He is just a chaotic, more creative mind. It's just the way he is. He likes to think outside the box. He does that. He just has always done that. It's not that he's like this incredible sociopath, right? That's not what I'm saying either. He just is a person that will challenge status quo, but still lives life mostly by the rules, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, that makes 100% sense. Thanks for answering that, because most people, or I always get told by the chat, men are never organized. Men are never, can't multitask. Men can't do this. It's obviously a generic sweep. Not every man's like that, but most men that's not that organized.
Yeah,
So
he definitely doesn't have OCD. I mean, they showed some pictures of his house, and there's a multitude of reasons why his house was a mess. But my grandmother had passed away, and we cleaned out the house, and a lot of the stuff that was just in the main floor of the house was sort of like the culmination of all of those belongings. He was going through and burning a bunch of the stuff that had no value, that was maybe sentimental to our grandmother, but you know nobody wanted in the family, nobody that it came from or belonged to. So he was going through a lot of that and disposing of things that that nobody wanted anymore, which is frankly why there was so much stuff in the fire pit that normally you wouldn't find in just a little wood fire pit in the backyard. You know, there were clothes in that. There were a lot of things that were just burned to get rid of it because he was just trying to clean house. You know, between that and cleaning out the bedrooms upstairs for for the kids because he was going into that custody dispute. Anyway, I digress. We're talking about stuff not related to what Gravely is talking about, but it's important to
No,
recognize that he's not an organized guy. Yeah, I planned job sites. He didn't. He didn't do that. He didn't do any of the planning or bidding or anything like that. He had great ideas. He was an ideas guy,
yeah.
and he was really good at setting deadlines. But um, but he wasn't the guy that did planning. Not his thing.
No. I know we're digressing away from it, but I love it. This is the bits I love, the insights and the intricacies of Zach as a human being. Um, because one of the things that always gets me to this case and try to explain to people is Zach, you guys, you're just normal people. You do normal things. As you just said, Zach was doing a burn pit to get rid of his grandmother stuff. That's normal. Some people think out there that if you're on trial and stuff like that, they're not normal people. They're in the media. They're this and that. But as a family, you are just normal people. And
Yep.
Zach is a normal person that probably you saw in the store last week getting milk and maybe get some chocolate or something, whatever. And now he's in prison. So
Sardines,
happened to everyone.
specifically Q-tips and sardines.
Sardines.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why I think these things are important. So I know that it might go over time here, but um, yeah. So thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. But also you're a planner. Okay, that's interesting. So you're not a normal man. You're not. You're quite organized then. So
Well, I don't. I think Jen would argue that I'm not organized enough, but I'm more organized than Zach by comparison for sure. So
that's fair.
I
That's
have the
fair.
capacity to do it, but there's just he never has been. He's never been that guy. It's never been. He understood consequence and then set guidelines in his life to try and make sure that he was within the parameters of avoiding consequence of anything that he was doing. That was really it. He would make rules for his own life to live by
Yeah.
to avoid like the consequence of I don't know, like driving over to Sadie's house or whatever it was, like he did things that were within his set of rules, but he's not a murderer. Like he's not that guy. And he's not an obsessive boyfriend. He's not that guy. If it didn't work out with someone, he just moved on. It wasn't a
Yeah.
big deal for him. Like he was fine. Like for whatever reason, like if a relationship didn't pan out with somebody, there's other fish in the sea. He was always that type of person. This is not what the way they painted him is not true to his character. Like he
He,
just didn't.
he comes across like a chilled out guy, and from what I've seen of him, do you know what I mean? So yeah, what you've explained to me is basically what I thought of him, carefree, just yeah, family first kind of guy. I likes a joke. Even you can
Yeah,
see it, even though there was some YouTubers slagging Nicole and him for flirting. That's just the kind of guy I bet he is. Just it's natural to have a joke. I'd be the same. Just have a joke with him. Just but no, he's flirting. It's like
right. To
yeah,
sexualize it because his attorney is female.
yeah,
But we always joke that Zach's the life of the death of the party, right? Like he's either the most outgoing, cracking jokes, like just the guy that's like in the moment and loving every minute of it, or he's sullen and cantankerous, right? Like there's like he's one or the other. There's no middle ground on him where he's like, I'm good, just not feeling it today. Like he's either like
yeah.
Mr. Charisma, or he's just anti fun, like one or the other. There's nothing in between. It's all or none on him.
And you're the middle guy, I imagine, just the same.
Well,
You're
I
the
don't know.
same. No
I
highs, no lows.
I get. I mean, I get passionate
A
about
little
certain
bit.
things, but
Yes.
I mean, keep in mind that Zach and Josh are 4 and 5 years older than me. So every time that I got mouthy about something, that I let my emotion get the best of me as a kid, I got smacked around. So I learned to usually temper my tongue. It taught me some valuable lessons that a lot of other people didn't have.
I can imagine. Right. Fair play. Thanks for sharing that. That's brilliant.
Right, who has shown day after day in the conduct that we have outlined patterns of that sort of planning, that sort of obsessive conduct, that sort of refusal to follow any of the limits and rules that most of us would govern ourselves and who we are willing to use to accomplish our goals in our lives. So when I say who, I mean, of course, the defendant, right? Because here's what we know about him in terms of other things happening in the very few weeks that we have a glimpse of his overwhelming, out of control, no limits jealousy towards any new love life.
That was never
for
presented.
his ex, Sadie Beach.
That was they had one audio recording where they played that he said, "Of course I'm jealous," but he also had a moment in that conversation where he said, "What are we doing here? You're supposed to be doing you, and I'm supposed to be doing me." So out of control jealousy, like that was never presented. It was never presented. They presented one statement where he mentioned that he experienced the natural human emotion, like Gravely said, early on, of jealousy. It's perfectly natural and normal to feel the jealous emotion. That is a normal human emotion. Uh, they say that he was this insane, obsessed, jealous person. He's not. He's not. He's very passionate about protecting his children. He's very passionate about intervening in what he perceived as an abusive relationship that their mother had with them. He was very passionate about that. He wasn't passionate about you know making sure that Sadie didn't have another man in her life. If that was the case, then he would have objected to all the other men that she had that were close to her for years. They would have had a much deeper basis, for this jealousy. She had a friend that used to come over and fix her car in the driveway that gave her deals on stuff like that. Then if someone is jealous, controlling, male friends of any capacity
Yeah.
at any point in the relationship are a threat. That was never the case. Never, ever the case. And he traveled. He was out of state or on the other side of the state for a good part of his career when he worked for AT&T. He was in California for a couple years. He lived out by the Twin Cities in Wisconsin for I think almost 2 years. So he wasn't here all the time. And for him to be highly jealous and controlling, there absolutely would have been circumstances during those years where male friends of Sadie's were around that he would have been losing his cool about. There's no history of this, no proof of this ever being an issue. None. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up. This whole narrative is false.
This is why I wish this was covered more by the defense as well. Um, in terms of chat, guys, there's loads of questions. I appreciate all of them. I can't get to all of them because we need to get through this. But yeah, we'll try. I know some of the answers to some of the questions, so I'll try and answer them later on. But I'm not ignoring the chat. Just want to get through this as well.
What are those pieces of evidence I'm suggesting are signs of an obsessed planner that are the signature of this crime of murder? Well, one is Olivia, and this is uncontroverted evidence, right? This is unchallenged evidence in this case in the record. The daughter tells you that her father had conceived a plan with her. And it is a truly sinister plan of having there be a day when Sadie had brought the boys and the daughter over to visit their dad. And then when they figured out that Sadie was gone to visit her new love life, then those children would be returned. And when those children would be returned, the daughter would make a call to her father saying fraudulently, falsely, well, I don't know where mom is. We are abandoned. And then he would falsely save the day. He would report this. She would be a child neglect mom because of the false information and the horrible use of an 11-year-old girl to accomplish his sinister aims.
This is where I can imagine Zach's like, you have no fucking clue, mate, to this DA. No effing clue.
So what he just mouthed was not true.
Yeah.
So the question is, I think what the debate is in this moment about that statement. Was that what was testified to? Because that was Gravely's statement. Was it testified to? Now, there was a line of questioning about the plan that this went into. And to Gravely's credit in this circumstance, I believe that is the gist of what was presented as the plan by my niece, even though he didn't have enough respect to remove her from the courtroom and put her in a private room so it was less traumatic
Yeah.
for her, or which is actually in the Wisconsin Judicial Code, that for minor witnesses that that there's a whole subsection, pages and pages and pages of minor witness testimony that grant the ability, the obligation of the court actually to remove a minor from witness testimony like this, where it would cause them severe emotional distress, like it did clearly, with emotional outbursts and everything, and put them in a separate room, and then in a private closed circuit camera to do an interview in that room and broadcast it live to the court. Now, they didn't do this. Uh, Zach's lawyers asked for them to not put my niece on the stand to spare her this humiliation. Now, I don't know what that motion read or what that request read very specifically, but in that, if they did request that she was removed from the courtroom proper and it was denied, that was illegal. In that motion, that it states very specifically that anyone can do that. And had I known that during the trial, I would have absolutely stood up from the gallery and demanded it at 100% to protect my niece. I didn't learn that. I'm not a lawyer. I didn't study
Yeah.
for the bar in Wisconsin. So I learned that after the fact when I was really, really digging through the state statutes and legislature, and it's very specific and egregious in my opinion. They damaged my family member, my niece's, psychological well-being, long-term psychological well-being, by putting her through what they did.
Yeah. And I've discussed that in previous videos. I think it's ridiculous that she was even there. And you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but uh, I was under the impression that they were, what do you call it? She was on her own being prepped by the DA. Is that true as well?
Uh, I mean, I've spoken to my niece about it a little bit afterwards, and she said that she met with him a number of times before. I think it was three separate meetings, something like that. Um, and I don't know if she said 4 hours a meeting or if it was 4 hours in total, but she said that she couldn't stand him either. But I'm not sure if she was, you know, telling me something I wanted to hear or not. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. That's all hearsay. But I've already stated that I was misinformed about the 40 hours, but three separate meetings to go over her testimony seems excessive.
Yeah.
Like why did it require three separate meetings for them to discuss this? It seems disingenuous in itself.
I agree, and especially if she's on her own, she should never have been on her own with him anyway. Um, but yeah, okay. I'll press this.
Who comes up with a plan like that? Who offers that as something that an 11-year-old should do for them? What sort of mind is capable of putting that plan and that use of an 11-year-old out into the atmosphere as something real. And I suggest you it's the same person
Just mouth liar.
who could commit and
Yeah. I didn't want to stop it because one short, but it's lying.
Yeah,
you said, is it?
yeah, liar. Yeah. So
Well, I think most people will be going, "You fucking prick," right now. Do you know what I mean? Because this is his life, and he probably is like, "How can you lie?" Well, anyway, I could rant all day, so honestly,
did commit this homicide. So what other evidence do I have that, this is a obsessive planner, knows no limits? Well, what about the daughter telling you that when she was urged to peek in that window at her mother, when her mother, a consenting
I will
adult, did
point
not have
out
the
that
children over? I'm talking about April.
that he's just cited two things that have nothing to do with a planned homicide. Nothing. Absolutely nothing to do with a planned homicide. This is like calling an apple an orange and then suspending disbelief. He's citing this as a highly planned thing, right? Not fogging up the glass. That's some indication of him being a highly planned individual. Why would that be highly planned? That's just spur of the moment. There's no highly planned anything about that moment. It's just recognizing that your breath will fog glass if you're exhaling hot breath. That's not highly planned. So either way, one, these statements do not indicate a highly planned homicide because they're not a highly planned homicide plan at all. And two, this is not an example of a plan. It's not. Carry on. Or do you have
just
commentary
an
about that?
no, that's just an example of him lying again and just trying to make it sound like. Once you say it, though, it makes sense. In the moment, though, I can imagine a juror is like tired, a little bit. I'm just believing every word he's saying right now, potentially. But yeah,
24th. When Rosalio is over at Sadie's home, it's the evening. Neither of them have their kids with them. They're consenting adults, and they're in the living room. And when the daughter peeks up over that into the window to look in at her mother, which the father has urged her to do, the defendant tells her, think about this as a small snapshot in this case. He tells her, hey, keep your shirt up so that you don't steam up the glass, so that you can't be detected from inside. Who would even have ever thought of that? What sort of an obsessive planner?
Anyone that's ever breathed on a window and then written in it, anyone would think of that. Have you ever done that when it was cold outside? Fogged up the
yeah.
glass and written it? Have you ever gotten out of the shower and drawn on a mirror to leave a message for whoever else in your house just to be cute or funny? Have you ever done anything like anyone would think of that? There you go.
Yeah, I wanted to get it off your chest there.
Yeah.
Has that in their brain to share to an 11-year-old? Who is
Yeah.
there?
Thanks, Mads.
Who is
Anyone that
already
wears
thinking about
glasses.
covering
How do you clean your glasses? And rub it
Haha,
with your
yeah, and
shirt.
then
Okay? Anyone. It's ridiculous. It's it is a false premise to cite that as some sort of, insane planning.
well, that shows you he's clutching at straws. But
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
ups and avoiding detection in that kind of profound way. It's a snapshot, right? It's just a little moment. And of course, it is the kind of thing I'd suggest you, an 11, 12-year-old would never have the capability of giving that kind of detail in a lie or frame up or some kind of false story that she was put up to. Think about all the computer files that this defendant has that are about Rosalio Gutierrez and the high amount of planning that is. All those snapshots that he stored on his computer, all the lookups he had done of this individual, and didn't just peek at them, stored them. Had a file for them. Had a file where he included the picture of the tracker. What about buying trackers at a point where you feel like you're losing control of Sadie Beecham?
He said plural.
And even though you have another.
Trackers.
They only presented one. They claim more than one. He claims more than one, but they only presented one. Interesting. Um, and maybe some of you in the chat will remember or correct me, but I'm pretty sure that there was only one tracker, um, and that was found new in the package. They found no other proof or use of any tracker. And I've stated in previous interviews that he and I had actively discussed putting, GPS trackers on my truck so I could not be in the field all the time to give me a little bit of leeway, for the business. So, does it surprise me that he bought a GPS device or started to look into them? No, we had multiple conversations about them. Did that mean that he was using them for Sadie? Also, no. That there was no proof that it was ever used for Sadie. Um, so the fact that he had a file on Rosalio, okay, that's that they presented that in the case. But we've also talked about that as being a piece of the evidence to present against Sadie in a child custody hearing to say, well, this is the type of person that she's bringing into our children's lives. And there's some really, really interesting things in Rosalio's past that I think that any father would be alarmed about, especially a father with a daughter. So um, I'm not here to slander Rosalio Gutierrez in any way, shape, or
No.
form, but for those of you that are out there doing digging, there's some stuff and you can find it. So, um, I'm not going to disparage, a missing man, but there's good reason for my brother to be concerned. Okay.
And this ties into what Josie's saying. Who hasn't researched someone online before, especially a father that wants to know, right, who is this guy? And the same way I'm sure she would have researched any girlfriend that Zach had. You want to know who that person is. It's human nature. Your children are going to be around them. You want to make sure that they're legit and they're not like, you know, a murderer or something. Do you know what I mean? So, um,
Other girlfriend that you are wanting her to have no one in her life. Um, the buying of the tracker itself is a sign of a planner who's willing to put a lot of obsessive effort into this. And then what about May 13th? You get your directions on your phone. Your phone puts you on May 13th, right where Rosalio Gutierrez lives, and then you text Sadie the same sentence that has just come
No,
out
it
of
didn't.
Rosalio's mouth. So you're overhearing.
It didn't. They didn't present that. That's a lie. It did not ever place him at Rosalio Gutierrez's home. So the evidence presented in the courtroom very specifically placed him in Kenosha, not at Rosalio's house. So that is a misrepresentation of fact.
yeah, yeah, okay.
From right on that patio what's being said inside. Okay?
Also, that
Wasn't that
right there, she didn't text Zach. That's like, why are you following me? Until the next day, like 11 hours later. Her first statement in response to him, you know, texting her that night was, "You're texting the wrong person again." 11 hours later, the next day at like noon, she texted him, "Why are you following me?" Again, that actually works against the state. That not only doesn't prove that he was stalking, but it also proves that Sadie was not afraid of him in the moment at all whatsoever.
Yeah,
Didn't I mean, to
yeah.
the point where she didn't even think that he was there in the moment. So if Sadie didn't think
Mm.
that he was there in the moment, why should anyone else? That was the nature of their relationship. Sadie didn't believe that he was there until the next day when she was like, "Wait a minute, I'm going to accuse him of this." That's not fear. That's not suspicion. That's not severe emotional distress. That's not proof of stalking.
No. And I think that that becomes clearer, and I know we don't have time to speak about it today, but that all becomes clearer if people wanna look at the website again, look up the Denny motion, because there's a lot of stuff in there that If you're unsure about anything, look at that Denny motion.
That's a whole nother
Um,
bag of beans there, friend. I
that's
don't know that we
another
have
thing.
time to get into that, but
We don't. But I encourage people to look at it because the timings that you're speaking about, that he was in Kenosha and stuff like that, it's all there. It's all outlined there, and who would possibly have been there and stuff. So, in your own time, look at the Denny motion,
for those of you that are
please.
wondering, if you really want to see the timestamps on what I'm talking about, on our website at freezachariahanderson.org over here, there is the timeline. The timeline breaks down every timestamp on when all of these conversations happened during this day. And if you want to go check it out, please do. It's on the website. The timestamp on when that text message was sent and this whole exchange. Absolutely. This is a misrepresentation of what occurred that night.
Yeah, everything's on the website, guys. So please, please, the top of the chat, press that, takes you everywhere. You can literally look at everything about this case.
Yell out to you as a jury that that's a dry run, that that's a reconnaissance mission to figure out what the terrain is, so that the next time you come down, just 4 days later, you don't have to have your phone, right? You already know now how to get there. You've got the directions from your prior visit. You know how close your van will have to be when you kill this man to be able to remove his body from that location. You already have had a chance to think about and put together a plan that is informed. This is the planner that is necessary to carry out the plan of what you have heard about the evidence that happened on May 17th. And you know
So that's a
that this is a
massive
highly
leap.
planned.
That's a massive leap because there was no evidence presented that he had any plan of murdering Rosario Gutierrez. No evidence. Not even inferred evidence. He's grasping at straws to try and make this connection right here. There was nothing found that connected Zach to that crime scene. Nothing. Not even on the 13th. They didn't find Zach's DNA outside of Rosalio's apartment at all. Nothing. Not one iota of Zach ever being present, ever being located at Rosario Gutierrez's apartment at all. Not one thing in or around Rosalio's apartment tested positive with Zach's DNA. Nothing. They had no proof that he was there on the 13th. They had no proof that he was there on the 17th. Nothing.
And for those that, like, I know there's a bit of a debate last night on my thread by one of my followers I was glad that people were respectful about it. She believes that Zachariah is guilty, no question, guilty. The way that people came at her was trying to explain some stuff about it. Everything that Saul's speaking about as well, it's on the website. The He was never seen on any cameras. He was never seen on anything. His phone was at home, and all these details, but that I'd love to get into, but it's all on the website. And I encourage anybody, please go and look at it. I know the majority of people here are, but any discussions on Twitter, please encourage them to reach out to the website because everything Saul's mentioning here, it's all on there. Do you know what I mean? Essentially, that all the timelines of if he was there, great. Show us on one of those 30-yard cameras how we got
Yep.
there or how we got back. So there's people that might think that what this guy, this Bravely character is telling us. There's proof now on hindsight, in hindsight, obviously, but it's all outlined there that it's literally impossible for Zach to have done this with
Yep.
timings, no DNA, no blood, no. There's literally nothing, and I want to get that in there by the website, everything on there because before we run out of time. But
Yeah.
everything
Moreover,
you're speaking about is there.
if
Yeah,
they had deployed even to find proof of him being at Rosalio's apartment proper on the night of the 13th, they never presented evidence. They never did that research. So there was no video proof at all that he was
Yeah.
that he was at Rosalia's on the 13th whatsoever, and the police never even investigated it to prove that he was. So, I mean, I understand that everything that they're presenting is circumstantial evidence. There was no direct evidence. There's nobody that was there that directly witnessed this occur. There's no direct evidence. So all of this is circumstantial and to varying degrees of reliability, because there's different tiers of credibility, from very weak to very strong circumstantial evidence. They don't even have they don't even have moderately strong circumstantial evidence to place Zach there. It's all
Mhm.
exceedingly weak. And the state pushes that the absence of any evidence indicates guilt, and that's coming.
Okay, fine. I'm what I'm gonna do as well is I'll put this in here. I'm actually gonna stream the whole trial again because I was thinking about all these things that, not just today, but we've spoken offline and stuff, and also looked at your interviews and everything. I want to look at this from another set of eyes now. Now we know a lot of these things. I can go back on the website, I can pause it, I can go through, well, actually, that's a lie. This is the truth. This is what happened. So I am going to be doing that. So if anyone wants to join me to go through it again, please do. Because there are still a lot of people out there that have not watched this trial or believe that he is guilty, have not watched the trial. So I'm I really want to get the message out to people because I'm still surprised at people who are not open-minded about it. So I will do that again. Um, I am conscious of your time as well, Sol, about this, and that you got to go to work as well. I don't remember what you said, but
I've got like 2 hours.
oh, okay, okay. Oh, I thought you had like 25 minutes, mate. So I was a bit
Yeah,
like,
no, we started at 10 my time, so I had like 3 to 4 hours to get this stuff
fine,
together. I took a shower, so I just have to like change and clean myself up a little bit before I head
fine.
to work.
I think I went with Eastern time by mistake, so that's why I was like, we're never going to do this. That's
Yeah,
why I'm rushing out saying all these things. Fine, okay, good. Thank God for that. Right, let's crack on then.
And incident. You know that because the defendant leaves his phone behind in that one. But he's also off the grid. He's not answering or texting or web searching. There's none of the usual activity happening on his phone.
They
he
test
can
that?
he can make that assertion or that inference. That was a statement of fact. He wasn't. Though there are other very plausible, reasonable things. Dylan, when was the last time that you texted, called, or browsed your phone when you were asleep?
That's yes. Even now, I'm speaking to you right now. Okay, I
Yep.
had a text message from my niece just now, but I've not responded yet.
Yep.
Do you mean I've not touched it? So, and that's what an hour and a half into this, and
Yeah.
I'm on my phone a lot. But yeah, and what was he a big texter? But I'll tell you, I don't think he's a big texter. That's just my thought process on him
He
on his
texted
phone.
enough, I think. I mean, this is a modern era, though he insisted on keeping a flip phone. So, especially with the flip phone, texting was a lot harder. So he
Yeah,
would call with that one quite a bit more. But he still received text messages with it. He still
yeah,
texted people. Like it's a normal mode of of conversation and in this day and age. But he just wasn't a fan of smartphones. He didn't like them being near him, so he usually left them, out of the house or segregated completely in his home. He didn't like having them on his person. So the flip phone kind of went with him wherever he went. And the smartphones, when he was done with their utility, would be put away.
that's it.
Like just for your insight as
But he
to
leaves it.
his nuance.
And what that tells you,
Oh,
folks,
sorry. I just think it's interesting because that was how I projected it. That he's a bit of a free spirit. That he wouldn't want to be on his phone text. Like a lot of people are just all day long. I don't see him
Yeah.
that type. I think he's a grafter. He uses his hands and stuff like that rather than be on his phone searching for stuff. So
He's a knucklehead, is what he is.
knucklehead. Hey, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. Happy
I love
days.
my brother, but sometimes he's an idiot.
I'm sure he'd say the same about you. So
100%.
you know, yeah, that's what it's all about.
He's not
Right.
dumb actually at all, but we get to rib each other like brothers, so that's the way it is.
That's what it's all about. I love it. I love it. Right.
Knowing this obsessive planner in terms of the other glimpses we get at him is that this is done for a purpose, because he must be able to cloak where he goes, to hide where he goes, because of what he will do next. And so if that is the plan, of course he brings gloves. Okay? Of course he brings the weapons he needs to
There's
be
no
able
proof of
to
that.
accomplish this
There
murder.
is no
Of
murder
course
weapon
he-
ever located. There's no proof of gloves. Okay.
Did they find any like debris of gloves or anything in the pit?
Nope.
I forget what they found. Nothing.
Nope.
So, okay, misquoted again. Then okay, cool.
He brings the tools that he will need to dispose of this body, right? The bags, any other tools he needs to finish that. Of course, this obsessive planner, this person, will have already thought about what the location is that he will place this body. What the dumpster is, or what the location is, will be something that has no connection to him, that does not require him to in any way deviate from any kind of timetable or plan. All of those things will have been thought over.
Interesting that he
Is it
says
an
that.
accident that he picks?
So, a dumpster with no connection to him. So, the
Yeah.
DA just asserted a dumpster with no connection to him. But the police did not search the landfill where the dumpster from Wood Creek Apartments was emptied. They released it without searching. The DA just pointed out the ineptitude of Kenosha PD.
Yes,
They
that's
they
true.
they also never ever ever located a dumpster in any capacity where Zach disposed of anything that was not connected to him. So we have a false statement of fact.
Because where if he's out of where would he take it? Where's the dumpster that he would use if he's planned it? Well, obviously they'd be on camera, so it'd be easy for them to track that.
Enlighten
Oh,
me.
hang on,
Yeah.
he wasn't on camera. So, do you know what I mean?
I mean, there are dumpsters off camera that exist, right? Those dumpsters exist. But the DA just asserted that he planned to take whatever paraphernalia connected to the murder to a dumpster that was not connected to him in any way, shape, or form. There's no proof of that ever occurring. They never located a dumpster, ever located a dumpster where he disposed of anything that connected him to the crime. Nothing. So not only is there no evidence of him committing this crime, but there's no dumpster ever located where he disposed of said evidence, and a dumpster that was suspected to have potentially been a location where evidence was disposed was identified. The place in the landfill where it was emptied was identified, and it was never searched. It was never even verified. They have not only not proven it, but they have made an absolute statement of fact here. They asserted that he did this without any proof, and in the trial they also presented a whole statement about knowing where this dumpster was emptied and then not doing their jobs to locate any evidence in that area. So
I think
ineptitude by the police, misrepresentation of fact by the DA, not even inferred by any evidence presented, statement of fact.
so. I just believe, right, that this day and age there's cameras everywhere. And I'm not going back to cameras again. I'm obsessed with cameras. But in this day and age, if you find all that blood and everything, I am I can't be 100% sure because obviously I don't know the layout, but I'm pretty sure there'll be cameras either on the building or around the building somewhere, or another stores or something that shows who comes in and who goes out. So is that, well, it must be Kenosha PD being inept and didn't even search it. So surely if he dumped it in another dumpster, then you would see his minivan taking it somewhere. You can track the cameras or something. But there
Well,
is nothing.
I mean, there are hundreds of thousands of dumpsters in the Milwaukee metro, right? So what dumpster would they even be narrowing down? They would have to have some sort of, evidence that would drag them there to
They
investigate
couldn't
the
because there is no
cameras.
evidence.
But
Yeah,
there was no evidence. They never
that's what I
located
mean.
anything. They didn't have anything. They searched anything and everything. In fact, they searched everywhere where he left his phone. Everywhere where his phone was at, where the phone traveled with him, anywhere and everywhere to try and locate any evidence of him being involved with this crime. And they turned up nothing.
No,
Not just a little bit of evidence, but nothing. They found the speck in the van that was questionably there later on that wasn't identified as blood at any point before December of 2020. So nothing, and even during the trial, was not identified as blood. But the state asserted that it was blood. DA Gravely made his statement that it was blood, tried to push two of the three experts from the state crime lab to say that it was blood, and two of the three refused to do that because it was not verifiably blood. It was not. End of story. He got Lisa Treffinger to express her opinion that she believed that it probably was, but that's not guaranteed, and it was not verified scientifically. So there's some issues with this. So you have all of these potential crime scenes, everywhere that they searched. They found nothing. Came back with nothing. Not just a little bit everywhere, but nothing.
yeah. Yeah. When you look at this now with a fresh pair of eyes, knowing some of these things, it's just like diabolical. How are we even here? Um, and that spec you spoke about, I know we'll get into it because it's further along, but
hmm
that's the number one thing that people attribute to his guilt. The number one thing. They go, yeah, it's blood. It's DNA. It's there. He's guilty. It's like it's a pin-sized, small, tiny speck that could have got there numerous of other ways,
Well, it's
and
a
that's
reddish
what
brown
makes him
substance
guilty.
that matched reddish brown substance to the exact color and consistency as the reddish brown substance everywhere else in the van. All of that tested negative for
Mental.
blood. All of it. Not just a little bit of it. All of it. There's no proof that it was blood at all. Anyway, sorry to
Yep.
interrupt you.
No, but I'm glad you did because that is genuinely the one thing that everyone says. His DNA and blood were found in there, and that's why he's guilty. They have nothing else except for that, but it's mental. Um, that's why I want to play it again. I hope that other people join and go, and he can point these things out to people. Anyway, let's play it on. No blood. Actually, yeah.
A day of a heavy
Uh,
rainstorm when people aren't going to be out and about, or certainly aren't going to remain out and about, I would suggest it is not an accident.
I would
So what happened?
suggest. There it
Well, the
is.
first
What are we counting? I would suggest. Doubt.
thing. I will go back and count.
I would suggest. So chat, you're supposed to be counting this. I would suggest not an accident.
thing we know is that in that hallway of Rosalio's apartment, the blood tells a story. And I'm going to suggest to you a reasonable thought process for
There you go.
is it tells
I would
Okay.
suggest a reasonable thought process to you. All
a
right.
story of a blitz attack in that hallway. Someone hiding,
Let's
ringing a doorbell, probably having no idea that Rosalio was
Probably.
expecting company.
Here we go.
Right? And so
Probably having no idea.
circumstantial. No idea. Jesus.
Probably. Here we go. So we're at 1 probably and 3 I would suggest.
is a person who's going to be prone to open the door. But it is going to be somebody who Rosalio doesn't know, because you're not going to blitz that person in the hallway and cause all that blood. If you know him, you're going to be inside. You're going to figure out a way inside to get yourself into a more private location. So it's going to be someone who will not be welcome and who you don't know. Rosalio doesn't know. And so
Well, no, he would know who Zach is, wouldn't he?
If he looked up pictures of Zach, maybe. I don't know. They never met. They never met.
Never met.
I
Okay.
want to put emphasis on that. They never met. Never met. Right? At all. Not in person. They never met. It was not a thing.
Okay.
So no, he wouldn't know him. He never met him. Maybe he saw some pictures. I don't know.
Yeah. But yeah, fine. But yeah, fine.
from the evidence in this case that there are at least 2 blows, blunt force trauma blows, a hard object hitting Rosalio Gutierrez in a way that makes him bleed. And not only makes him bleed, but makes his blood fly into the air to hit doors. And you know that when that blood flies, that door in the hallway is open. So Rosalio has not yet managed to go back in or to close that door when he is first attacked.
You don't know that at all. They never established that the door was open when he was hit the first couple of times. You have no idea. I mean, there was no evidence that the door was open. There were the droplets on the door frame, but there was no evidence that the door was open when those blows were struck. No evidence. So
maybe bring in an expert, Gravely.
I mean, they say that there was drips on the door frame that indicated directionality, that it came from inside. So that would require getting struck and it flying backwards.
Oh yeah.
So strike, and he says at least 2. So I guess there's possible on a backswing for blood to drip, but there was no proof. I mean, how do you know that Rosario didn't walk out and like drip blood on, as he walked out or stumbled out the door?
Yeah.
Well, you
Yeah.
don't know that it was from blunt force trauma. Nobody ever said that it was absolutely from that. Those drops on the door frame were from blunt force trauma. They said that they had a directionality. They said that they were blood. Sadie said that it looked like soy sauce.
Jesus. So maybe instead of celebrating the fact that they didn't spend any money on experts, maybe they should have really spent a bit of money on experts.
Yeah, probably.
That was swords probably, everyone, not Gravely, so you can't count that one. Can't count it.
The blitz attack that evidence leads you to. Remember that Officer Van Wee told you that he knows that door was still open at some of the points that the blunt force trauma blows are happening, because there's blood on the interior of the entry part of the door, and that when that door is closed, that either in the hallway or inside, that part of the door would not be exposed. So there's a blitz attack, and there's a couple of blows that happen out there, and then whoever is the attacker, the defendant in this case, the planner, needs to get himself in that apartment. And why is that? Well, he needs to get himself in there because 2 neighbors, at least, may start to hear a ruckus, right? A neighbor, when she is talked to in some detail, when it's not just a cursory sort of canvas, but when she's talked to in some detail, says after 9 or around 9, I hear a scream in the hallway of pain and surprise at a time period right around May 17th. Marissa Swanigan, who testified, told you between 10 and 11 on May 17th, I heard a loud banging for about 5 minutes against my living room wall. Something big was forced up against the wall. Now the defendant knows that he's got to hurry, okay? The blunt force trauma attack to get...
Sorry, I want to answer this one. I'll answer this one because I'm a layman on this. So why do people believe the DNA evidence was true and accurate? I'll tell you why. Because of this guy.
CSI.
No, even it's this guy. for me is what I was explained, right? So obviously they said that one person said it was most probably blood, but this guy keeps saying it's blood, it's blood, it's blood, it's blood, it's blood. Once you say it enough times, people now believe it's blood. His DNA was all over it, everything. That's what I believe anyway. And I'm someone that's removed from it, so that's why I thought. I remember that in the time, in the moment, I didn't believe it, but other people said no. He said in his clothes, the blood found in the van, and people believed it. So
I mean, he stated
that's why
that it was blood,
he,
and then he pushed,
yes,
the
yes,
other crime lab experts to try and get them to state that
yes,
it was blood, but he couldn't get them to do it. So
yeah.
in fact, he had pushed. Oh, I never remember his name. Bill Nye. Chad, I know that you're there. The second expert, the one that peer reviewed her report, Gravely keeps asking him to give his peer reviewed opinion. Give me your peer reviewed opinion. And he pushes multiple times to get him, yeah, Ron Watucky. So he tries to get Watucky um, to state specifically his peer reviewed opinion. And Watucky refuses. He doesn't. He says, "Well, I peer reviewed the report." And he goes, "But what is your peer reviewed opinion?" And he goes, "Well, I peer reviewed the report, and I verified what her findings were in the report." And they go back and forth. They spell, or they do this dance with each other on multiple occasions. Like, he keeps trying to push him to give his opinion, that Watucky's opinion, that it was blood, and Watucky doesn't. It's very important to watch that exchange, because you can see him trying to manipulate the expert witness, the guy from the crime lab, uh, over and over, trying to use the subtlety in language, right? Trying to do that, trying to trip him up and get him to say something on the stand, so then he can cite it later on and to solidify his own BS argument, his own false claim.
I was saying it's Bill Nye. Just going with lots of people now saying it's Bill Nye.
Yeah, I know. It's everybody called him Bill Nye as soon as he sat down. He's like a
Oh, I fell
thin,
for
nerdy
it.
white guy.
So you all put the fishing out, and
Uh,
I went in and I got it. I took a bite. I took a
yeah,
bite.
yeah, but
I
his
did
his
the
name is
trick.
actually Ron Watucky.
You
Smith,
buggers.
but everybody called him Bill Nye.
And I told everyone I was a dumb guy, and you made me hook and sinker. You bastards. Anyway, right, let's get on with it.
Get Rosalio Gutierrez in a position where he can be killed. That blunt force attack has to be finished as quickly and efficiently as possible, because the defendant has no idea whether someone will come any moment soon. All of his preparation needs to be hurried. And so there are continuing blows. There's another blow now on the inside at the door that is a blunt force trauma. Again, blood flies onto the wall, onto part of the ceiling. Over by the dining room table, so a few steps further into the apartment, over on the wall over there, there's a table over there, and that also has a blow that is suffered right by it. And then there are additional blows at that table right at the entryway, and then another blow at the couch. These are all blunt force trauma blows. And Officer Van Wee said conservatively there have to be at a minimum 6 of those, based on their locations and the differing blood
That's not what he
that
said.
has splashed.
He he said a minimum 2, somewhere between 2 and 6 blunt force trauma blows. That's what he said. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that he had stated that Van Wee had stated that somewhere between 2 and up to 6 were struck.
Okay. Yeah, I won't be able to correct that. So if anyone else can. a first stop a friend.
And spattered onto the blinds and all those surfaces and the ceiling and the walls. 6 blows of attack. But blunt force trauma is not an efficient way to end someone's life, right? You can immobilize someone.
Wait.
Maybe they'll die eventually.
How does he
Oh.
know? How the hell does he know? Blunt force trauma is not an efficient way to end someone's life? What are his qualifications to decide that?
Say that.
I mean, just out of curiosity, are you familiar with medieval warfare at all?
A little bit, but not massive. But yeah, I am a little bit.
In medieval warfare, they wore chain and plate mail. You know how they killed people in medieval warfare? Most often was blunt force trauma. Because that's when warhammers and maces were used. You're telling me that blunt force trauma doesn't end someone's life? What is he talking about? How is he an expert on this? For the love of God, why is he inserting himself as an expert? That was never presented. That blunt force trauma is not a quick or efficient way to end someone's life. How is he an expert on this? What does he know?
Yeah. And why are the defense not, again, not inserting themselves in this? So I'll be honest with you, as a layman, you are pointing out a lot of things right now that if I was a juror, I'm not, even though I'm sat here and I'm going through this with you, I haven't picked up any of this stuff that you are now picking up. So that's what's scary though, because you're picking it up, the jurors aren't. Well, not everybody. That's why
Well, the jurors
it's a bit
definitely
annoying.
didn't. That's
Yeah,
the truth.
obviously, but I don't blame him in that sense because I know that this guy's lying, but I'm still not picking up on all these things. You know, okay, I'm picking up on some of the stuff, but not all the intricacies of what he's saying. So yeah, it's scary how much he is allowed to lie. And as much as I love Nicole. I'm her number one fan, and I know it's not her supposed to be interjecting here, but this guy who's experienced. I'm not going to rub salt in the wounds or anything because obviously he's passed now, but I do not understand why they're not objecting to these things because they're professionals. They understand all these things. That's what's annoying me right now. This guy keeps on lying because he's allowed to lie. He's allowed to assert himself as an expert. He's allowed to say whatever he wants because no one's stopping him. Everyone's like, oh, he's having a party. He's like, well, I can say anything. I can say we found the body and no one's going to object to it. That's what's annoying. Um, but anyway, sorry, I'm being a little bit ranting. I don't want to say that because obviously, who am I to say any of this stuff? Do you know what I mean? I'm not a lawyer or anything, but if you're not going to interject, then you're just going to carry on talking shit.
Yep.
So I got Vala. What's this? I'm looking for someone to absorb Val's beer debt. Oh, sorry, mate. Not the right spot here. Sal's got work, and I'm not. I don't drink alcohol at the minute, so pounding beers. Sarah P will do it. Sarah P and Josie will do it. The mods will do it.
Is not an efficient way to quickly end someone's life. And so I'd suggest to you that the rest of the evidence in this case is certainly consistent with someone then changing weapons. And one of the things we know is that at least the handle of the object that was the blunt force trauma instrument, right? Whether it's a bat or an axe with a wooden handle, whatever, some kind of hammer with a wooden handle,
This was
whatever.
never ever testified to.
Blunt force trauma.
No one ever testified to the changing of weapons. No one did that. Another lie.
Imagine if he counted all his lies.
He inferred that based on the fact that Marquand Washington, when he lied about Zach's dream confession, stated that he stabbed, stabbed Rosalio, and the evidence, as shown, implied that it was blunt force trauma, but there was never, ever evidence of a change of weapon. That never happened.
Please, for the love of God, no juror believed that Marcus or what Marquise or wherever his name was, please,
Marquand Washington,
and none of them believed him.
also known as
But yeah,
Munch.
Munch, and isn't he out now?
House arrest, yeah.
Jesus
He
Christ.
had
Uh,
like 500 kilos of heroin or something. It was of meth or heroin. It was a lot. He had a lot. It was a lot of weed. I don't remember the exact amount that he was charged with, but it was a huge amount of marijuana. And then I think there was meth and heroin or something like that he was busted with. And he's just on house arrest.
Before I answer you back there, Falala, thank you for the kind gifts as well. I really appreciate that. Um, Sarah P, get drinking. Um, so I remember, and I might remember incorrectly, but I'm pretty sure he was asked under oath, "Has the DA promised you anything?" And he always said, "No, not been promised anything." Bullshit. He was promised stuff, but the DA would have made it very clear, if you say anything under oath, deals off. I can't do anything. You have to lie. If you lie, 6 months later, you're under house arrest. Don't worry about it. This is, again, how corrupt this guy is. How, yeah, okay,
Well, not just this guy, the system. This is how corrupt the system is.
absolutely. And we can speak about that all day. Jesus Christ.
Object is. We know that there's such magnitude of blows, such force, whatever, that wood shatters. You know that the blows being administered to Rosalio Gutierrez eventually shatter that wood, because there's a shard of that wood that you see that has hair of Rosalio Gutierrez on it and the blood of Rosalio Gutierrez on it. Literally something that certainly seems like impacted his head, right? And there are other shards of wood found at other locations, right? On the couch, there's a couple of shards of wood. So we know that
You see that he
weapon,
said it seems like it impacted
Seems.
his head. So that's another dodgy statement. It seems, which also implies that it might have impacted his head.
So he's not lying. He's not
Seems.
lying.
It
Seems.
seems.
I never
I
said
didn't
he
have proof.
was.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
never said it happened. I said it seemed like it did. It's not an absolute. Another dodgy lawyer moment.
You know. Jesus.
got busted. And so some new weapon likely was employed. And I suggest
Likely.
to you a knife or a sharp object.
A new
makes
weapon
perfect
was
sense.
likely employed. There you go. There's another one.
He's very right. He's very clever the way he spun these words. Obviously, he's been doing this for years and years and years. Obviously, he can do it.
30 some years. Yeah, 30, 31 years or 30 years or whatever.
Jesus.
Yeah. Likely.
Jesus.
Likely employed.
Likely.
So
But
no
as a
proof.
jury, don't.
Likely.
Yeah. You don't remember the likely, though, do you? Oh no, he said the blood and everything. Yeah, you don't remember the word likely when you're deliberating. You just because they're not allowed to write notes right now, are they?
Nope.
So in your head, all you're hearing is blood. He's been murdered. Zach's a
New
planner.
weapon. He's a planner.
Yeah.
Yep.
Jesus Christ.
There's arterial spray, which is something that happens if you puncture an artery, which a sharp object will efficiently do for you and cause a spray. Not the same blunt force trauma splashes and spatters and stains, but a different one. And often if you stab someone in their vital organs, because it's close to them, and if they're down and not fighting anymore, all you will have is blood flow and the drips and draining of their life out of their body. And so there would be no other and distinct evidence of this murder.
That was
when
never
you turn to the knife.
testified to. That was never presented. Not even a little bit. They did talk a little bit about arterial spray, like the damaging of an artery, and how when arterial blood, because there's pressure in an artery, how it will spray. That I believe did come up, but they never talked about the stabbing on the floor. Never talked about that. Nope, not even a little bit.
So again, it's his opinion and inserting himself as an expert again on something he has no knowledge about.
Yep. So no expert to talk about how that blood got there. That it was definitely a stab wound that pooled. That was never talked about. So now we have him, inserting himself as the expert on this. Completely improper.
Were you there when this was happening?
I was not in the courtroom for this. I
No.
had to work that day.
No. Yeah, fine.
And when you finish Rosalio Gutierrez, because he no longer in any way, shape, or form is able to fend off any blows. You have to hurry. People have already heard a little bit of a ruckus. You have to hurry. You have to finish him. And so you finish him and maybe get a little arterial spray, some blood drips. Your plan, the defendant's plan, was to make it look like he disappeared. And so he was going to stage this in a way that made it look like maybe this is a disappearance. And eventually people would figure that out, but that would buy some time.
I'm gonna fall asleep.
Right? It's a Sunday night.
And
Tired
also,
as
he's
hell.
probably thinking, there's no way anyone's going to believe this shit.
Well, it's
Surely.
preposterous to start, but
Yeah.
Also during this time, the corrections officers, the COs at the county jail, had kept him up for like 3 days.
What? How do they do that? How
They
does that
would
work?
when he finally fall asleep, they'd like knock on his cell or they'd mess with him.
Oh my god. I didn't know any of that. That's just
Yeah.
disgusting.
So he was like totally exhausted, like
Whacked
just
out.
completely spent. So he was already not sleeping here.
That's just
And
fucking-
eventually people would figure that out, but that would buy some time. Right? It's a Sunday night. This guy might be working in the morning. People might be coming over to his house.
So he
first thing
said he finished him fast, right? The attack happened about 10 p.m. and then he had time to stage. So he
Yeah.
stages the apartment. How much time does it take to stage an apartment without spilling things or leaving your DNA behind?
Yeah.
So now he stages the apartment with no evidence ever presented about him staging the apartment. The coffee tables are moved off the rug. The table in the dinette is pushed back into the corner. The rug is removed, right? Rosalio is missing. But he staged the apartment. So there are things that are moved. The shoe tray is turned up against the wall. Those things are all manipulated by someone that was in the apartment and done so carefully. But how much time does it take to move all of that, to interact with all those objects? Now keep in mind that the time frame in question is around 10 minutes. To bludgeon a man to death, to stab him, to make sure he's dead, and then to stage the apartment, to wrap up the corpse, and to carry it out and place it in the van with no evidence left behind of your involvement. 10-ish minutes. Now, if you sit and stare at a clock for 10 minutes, it takes a long time.
Yeah.
If you're busy doing something, think about being at work. You're focused on something and you're working on it. 10 minutes, gone in the blink of an eye. No way. There's no way that this happened in 10 minutes. I mean, it's physically improbable. You would have to be an experienced, practiced murderer to be able to process a body, wrap it up, stow it, and stage a crime scene in that little bit of time.
Mm. Yeah. Well, you'd have to be Hulk as
Also
well
that
to lift
because
that.
the guy's massive. But I mean,
Yeah.
if hypothetically you like put down a giant run of plastic sheeting and you drag this dead man on a giant run of plastic sheeting out and into the back of the van. How much time does it take to stage that? How much time does it take to unwrap and put all that protection down? How much time does it take to move all the furniture, to wrap up the corpse, to do all these things? How much time? It is an unrealistic time window for this to occur. It's not just
Mhm.
it's not just unlikely. It's completely improbable to impossible.
Yeah. I was going to say impossible. It's impossible. I always just think about not even what you just said. I just even think about removing the body.
Yeah.
End of it stops there. I mean, Zach, he's slight. I'm like closer to, well, I'm probably like 270 pounds,
Yeah, you're about,
maybe a
and
little
how
bit
tall
less.
are you?
6 foot.
You are Rosalio's size.
Yeah,
You, six
yeah,
foot 270. That is as big as Rosalio was. Think about you, right? When was the
yeah.
last time someone threw you over their shoulder and ran with you?
I mean, you're talking about rugby, but not even no,
Yeah,
years and years ago, and even then I was lighter then. But there is zero. Like I'd have to be standing, they'd have to be bending over to lift me as a fireman's lift. No one I know, probably maybe one person in all my life could maybe pick me up from the floor because some of my mates do weights and things like that.
yeah.
But no way, you can't because not only have you got no grip on the rug, you got to lift it dead weight from the floor. There's no chance of that happening. I couldn't even lift myself. Do you know what I mean? I couldn't. It's impossible for me. I'm not that strong. Do you know what I
Right.
mean? So
That's what I'm saying. This is an completely unrealistic and unsupported argument. Completely. It's just totally debunked. Anyway, so I'm spinning down just like I just hate this man so much.
no,
Just
no, I
everything
love it.
that
I
he
love it.
says, everything that he
I love
says
it.
is just vitriol to me. He's he's an intelligent person. Michael Gravely is an intelligent, crafty lawyer. He is very good at doing this to dodge any sort of any repercussion from his crimes that he's committing against citizens, right? Against
Yeah,
the people. This man is committing crimes against the people. He needs to be put away. We need to stop this man from doing this to anyone else.
yeah, yeah.
Anyway,
Totally agree with you. And one other final question for me about this because I wanted to ask you this. Yeah, no one blames Solomon for that. I mean, I think he has still been very respectful. Um, how when he brings him out, okay, he brings him out with his bad back and everything, and Zach places him in his minivan. How long is that minivan? Can that minivan actually take that rug? Because that rug cannot bend. It won't be able to bend or anything because the body's inside tightly. If you haven't got nothing in there, you can bend the rug. But if you've got a body in there, it's nigh on impossible to bend that rug to get it in.
you would have to slide it up between the seats at, a 7-foot rug. It's because the rug was 5 by 7.
Yeah, no,
So
you
he
have
could have
to.
rolled it up the 5-foot direction and then only had 6 feet. But then it still would have been,
Yeah.
roughly the bottoms of his shoes at the back of the seats up front. You might have
Yeah.
been able to
Okay.
put him
Well,
at a
that's
little bit of an angle, but it's
not
it's
much.
so exceedingly unlikely that it would have worked. Like I could probably lay down in the back of a minivan. I'm 6'1". But
Yeah.
with the rug and everything else, I don't know.
No. And to do it without anyone. So it's interesting that people heard the arguments or the punches and stuff, but never heard like any slamming of him trying to get a rug with a person inside out into his van and everything. So
And keep in mind, they didn't ever find any rug fibers in the back of Zach's van, which is clearly not vacuumed. So if you look at the crime scene photographs,
yeah,
his van is filthy. Like it's full of debris everywhere. There's dust and crap all over the back of the van. So they claim that it was meticulously cleaned, but the evidence presented indicates that it's not meticulously cleaned. And furthermore, there's no evidence of any carpet fiber. Now, they can make the argument that he lined the back of his van completely with plastic. So you take the time, and you might have been able to do that ahead of time, right? This is me playing devil's advocate to that statement. But I mean, that doesn't protect the rear hatch. That doesn't protect the latch where the connection makes. There's a little metal ring, where that comes down and grabs. None of that. None of that could be protected. You're not going to keep any evidence off of that. It's just not going to happen. Doesn't make sense.
That's just another piece of evidence that he has to get rid of as well.
Right. And then where did all
Essentially.
this stuff go? They never presented any evidence of there being any plastic ever. And where did he go? Because he had to dispose of that at some point. They claim that he was doing that sometime on the 18th, I guess, because he apparently just left his phone on the job site that he was working on that day. So he went up to that job site, and now magically he left his phone there and then went off and didn't do his job. So this is what the state is, claims. And where is this mystical dumpster? And there's nothing in the back of his van that anybody could cite in any of the surveillance footage that saw the van. So it's not like it was piled up with
No.
debris, like to cover anything in the bottom of the van. The windows you could see through.
Okay, right, we've got to crack on because losing time here, but it's just maddening.
Morning, how am I buying
Maddening.
time would be your first plan. And so you are trying to create a plan. The defendant, the planner, is saying, I am going to try to stage this.
So
there's
he's
no
now creating a plan. So
Yeah.
so wait. So what did he plan it the whole time? Was he a high degree of planner to the point where he had a plan for the plan, and that it was just a plan of this murder, and everything was planned to such a degree that he could execute this in 10 minutes. But now he's creating a plan at the crime scene?
Yeah.
There's some
Yeah.
faulty logic here. Anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, you're 100% right. Thanks for pointing that out. Just another gravely lie.
And he's got to hurry. So he grabs up the wood pieces he can grab, but he misses one or two, right? He straightens up a couple of pieces of furniture that either fell over.
Right?
Yeah.
So he picks it up, right? So, I mean, there's
thing.
like in language, I guess this could be not, it's a statement of imploring the trustworthiness of what he's talking about. So that's trying to reach out to identify with the audience, right? Just like that, right?
There's no other way. Saul. It would have been, do you know what I mean? That's what he's trying to say, basically, is
Yeah.
there's no other way,
Right?
guys. Yeah.
Right? So he continues to play head games, right? You see what I'm saying? And he does this through the statement. He peppers in these, right?
Yeah.
There's no other way, right? He's beseeching trustworthiness when he does this. Unbelievable, right? There's more. He does it more.
I'm sure he does.
Or got repositioned as Rosalio Gutierrez is staggering, or maybe even trying somehow to fend some blows off.
Maybe even
those moments.
Where are we at?
I think just Jurors is counting.
Moments of quick staging occur. You had an idea already, and so you
11.
follow through on taking his credit cards and his phone. You don't want to leave with those. You are afraid that those leaving might give some clue to where you've gone next, right?
What? So he takes Rosalio's body, the physical corpus. But his logic is that you must leave the credit cards because those are trackable. What?
That makes
What
no
the
sense.
hell is this guy talking about? How?
So
How does that make sense?
you'd have to use the cards to make it trackable, not put it in a freezer to make it untrackable. That makes 0 sense. Um,
No sense. Absolutely no sense. Why? Why then are the credit cards left? If you're taking the body, I don't understand. It makes no sense. There's no logical route on that. So that this whole interaction, this line of logic that he presents is ridiculous and unfounded. But
mm,
the cards were in the freezer. Not all of the cards, I believe, just some of the cards were in the freezer, and the phone was in the freezer. So,
but the
also
police never
hello,
found it.
David. How you doing, brother?
Oh, hi, David. Hi, David. Uh, yeah, and the police never found it. I'm not sure who found the cards and
The
everything, but
mother,
the
Celia
mother.
Patterson, found the stuff in the freezer.
So they did a thorough investigation.
Oh, Detective Onshoots claims that he definitely looked in the freezer.
Mm, I'm sure. I'm sure.
Detective
Very
Onshoots was
thoroughly.
conveniently out of town on the day that the defense was going to call him.
That's just appalling again. It, it should it should have been a case of no, he's summoned. He has to be there. No questions. You have to be there. Or we're in a world of Skype, Teams, and all that now. He has to testify whichever way. Not conveniently being out of the
Yep.
county or country,
Hole
wherever
up
he
in
is.
your hotel room, buddy, because you're about to testify,
Yeah.
via Zoom link.
Yeah. So we need to hide quick.
But if you hide them in the freezer, the battery will die quick, and there's a high likelihood that at least for a period of time, if somebody doesn't have their phone present, if somebody doesn't have their credit cards present, maybe they just left, right? So your half attempt to
Again,
stage a disappearance.
if you're taking the body and you take the credit cards with it, wouldn't
Yeah.
that make sense still to support the logic that he's just missing? You would never put them in the freezer. That's why this guy's a fucking knob.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense.
You throw it in like, there's so many other places that makes more sense that he would throw them or whatever. The freezer, I would never. It
No.
just was. There's no logic to it. You're right. Why would you put it in the freezer? I'm trying to think of a logical reason, but
The phone, I sort of understand because maybe you're paranoid that you can ping the phone to find it.
yeah,
You want it to discharge fast, you throw it in the freezer because phones, the battery life is shortened when it's in the freezer. That's something that's verifiable. They didn't have anyone verify that. They never had
no,
some sort of cell phone expert or battery expert that ever took the stand to talk about that. Oh, Kong tested it. Battery does not die faster in the freezer. I personally have worked outside for quite a bit of my construction career, and I can 100% tell you that there is a point where a battery is too cold and it will turn off.
it's enough.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
phone fails to function. Just like
Jen says that as
you
well.
can leave it in the sun and it will get too hot, and then the phone will just stop. So there are extremes that does happen. Though a freezer only sits at about like I don't know, somewhere between like 15 degrees and 30 degrees, something like that. Sometimes people can force them lower than that, but that's usually not quite cold enough to make it discharge. Um, not like I'm saying. I'm talking about working outside when it's like 20 below.
Yeah, yeah,
Like then you start to have a lot of problems. But
yeah.
that does happen.
Okay, so Thierry, see you later. Thanks for being here. She's going to come back and watch later. And Jen just says here, this is what makes logical sense: is you switch it off.
Yeah, you could
That's
just
the
turn it on.
logical thing.
You just power it
That,
down
that
because
okay?
you don't need security access to hold the power button and to hit
No,
off.
So there's had to go. Yes, that's true as well. I mean, okay, let's get back. None of this makes sense. None of it. And but the thing is, the more now I'm going through this, the more not sense it makes. I knew this didn't make
Yeah.
sense. I knew he lied a lot and stuff like that, but not to this extent.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Do you know what I mean?
None of what he's saying presented a logical, succinct argument about
No.
what occurred in that apartment. So he spun a narrative. He did tell a story, but it doesn't make sense at all.
No. It's on reflection.
The defendant still chose to follow through on. Of course, the problem is
It
there's
depends on
just
the
so
freezer,
much blood.
Matt.
And
What's that? Oh, you
Our freezer's not
mad.
0 Fahrenheit. It depends on the freezer.
this staged disappearance will not allow you to leave that area rug, which is so saturated with blood, that some of that blood, before it was moved, has already spilled off into a larger pool that remains on the side of where that rug was. But what do? You take his glasses, because if a guy disappears, of course he takes his glasses. You take his boots, right? A pair of his shoes. You take some footwear,
Right.
because of course, if somebody disappears,
Right?
Another one, right?
You take his glasses, right? Because if he disappears, why the fuck didn't he take the cards? This guy's an idiot.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's not
So,
actually
yeah.
stupid, but it's
So you-
ridiculous.
He's acting stupid. Not. He's trying to be personable and be. Guys, yeah. It just comes across. But Jesus, he is a fucking asshole.
take some basics to make sure you've staged it, but you got to take the rug. And you've brought supplies to be ready for this, right? You have made sure
Right.
that you're going to minimize any kind of
Right.
problems you'll have in your van and all that, but you didn't bargain for that much blood on the rug. And so you've
But going back to that, so much blood on the rug, as Marge actually says here, so saturated and no drag marks. Also, if there's that much blood, it's going to seep or it's going to come out potentially from the rug,
They
leave a little
never
bit of a
found the rug, so they
no,
don't know how saturated it was. There's no evidence of it.
no, no that. But what I mean is more for the drag marks or something.
Yeah.
And if he's dragging, he's taking a big chunk at a time. That could bump it so there's some blood splashes out. I don't know. I'm just talking shit, but
Yeah. Say you somehow use the rug as a sled to drag.
Yeah.
Then it's not saturated because there's no
true.
marks left.
No marks on it. Yeah.
So if you're hypothetically using the rug as a sled, then there's no blood saturating the rug because otherwise there would be blood everywhere.
There's all these hypotheticals.
I'm just throwing that out there, right? So I mean, just understand that I have no idea what happened with this rug. I don't know that the
Nope.
rug wasn't saturated. The reality is that they never presented any evidence of the rug, other than
Mm.
that there was blood pooling on the edge of what looked like where the rug existed. That's it.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. It's just I can't think that far ahead because I still can't see how Zach was able to put him in the rug.
Well, you have
So
to
that's
manipulate
why
the
I find
body onto the
yeah,
rug somehow. You have
yeah,
to do it in a way that you can then lift the bloody edge of the rug because the evidence presented indicated that at least part of the rug had blood on it. Make sure that none of that blood is dripping off the end of the rug, and then somehow turn that and get it out of the apartment without tipping those coffee tables over and clearly making it out the door without leaving any drag marks anywhere or footprints anywhere.
yeah.
How?
It's and you said in 10 minutes.
In 10 minutes.
Yeah. And Nancy's got a good point. Yeah, Nancy, hello, Nancy. She's from the area. I believe, if I remember correctly, she's from Wisconsin area. And I think she went to court as well, didn't she? I believe she went to the court.
If it's
Nancy
the
did.
Nancy I know, she showed up for sentencing.
Yeah, I believe it is the same answer. Yes. Yeah, combination of courtroom antics, the judge, and most likely jurors who just want to get the case over with. That's true. And also, she's got a question here, so that I'm not sure if you can answer this or by the jury and stuff
No
because no
jurors have
one's spoken
spoken.
out.
No, we have gotten.
Are they allowed to speak then, or
Yep, they can talk about the case if they want. They were released from silence. So once the
okay?
case ended, they were allowed to talk about it.
Okay, I wasn't sure if there's a stipulation they had to keep stum for a year.
Oh,
And she's like, "Yes, that's me."
that is.
Thank you, Nancy. Yeah. Right, let's get into this.
Figured out how you're going to transport him over. I don't know if you're using a tool or if you're just lifting him yourself. Whatever way you are moving that body that you've planned for, the body of Rosalio Gutierrez, wrapped in a rug, utilizing the duct tape and the rope that you brought, that your own daughter said was down in your basement when she left on this very same weekend. Using those supplies, you are leaving. But when you take this unwieldy, dead man, when you take him and you place him in the very back of your van, Rosalio Gutierrez and his DNA splash up.
Yep.
When you
I
take
don't
him
know.
and you set
There
him
we go.
down,
Oh, sorry, I thought you had something there.
Yeah. No, I mean that 13. I think
Yeah,
I believe
yeah.
he did say, I don't know. What his daughter had claimed. I don't know. Yeah.
Mm.
there's the tiniest of splashes. It's on the passenger side, halfway up that console. There's the tiniest speck of a splash that falls off as you set Rosalio Gutierrez's body down. It's almost imperceptible, but it's there, and it's in exactly the same location as the cutout carpet as that body was stored. And in the end, it reveals much of what a jury needs to know.
They had no proof that the body was ever in the back of the van. I mean, they had the spec, but no proof that it was over there. Completely circumstantial. And they had no proof that it was blood. So those are problems. He was allowed to opine that it was blood by the court, but there was no proof that it was, just to be clear.
I mean, he ran the courtroom. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I
Or I
know.
remembered. Okay.
So, while Rosalio Gutierrez is still wet with blood, while that carpet is still wet with blood, before it dries, when it would still be wet enough to splash because it's been seconds or a very few minutes since Rosalio Gutierrez shed that blood, that's when that speck of blood tumbles to that location in your van. And because you planned it,
Wait,
do exactly what we would
tumbles?
expect you to do.
He's
Yeah.
claiming that the speck of blood tumbles. I also think that it's interesting that he's inserted himself as a DNA splash expert again
Yeah.
in this by claiming that that when Rosalia was placed in the back of the van, that it splashed onto the console panel. That was never testified to, even by Van Wee. So that's an important thing to recognize here.
Yeah.
That he himself has inserted himself as his own witness or as his own expert in how that splash got onto the console panel. So just like, so we're keeping this into perspective. One, he's claiming this. No one else did during the trial. Two, expert witnesses are required to discuss exactly how this evidence is presented and how that would have gotten there. They had the crime scene, the crime lab people say that it appeared to be a splash, but that was it, and no other indication of how it did or could have gotten there. None. And saying that it tumbled is an odd way of saying it. So, like Lou said, does blood do gymnastics now? Tumbling is that's when you're rolling over things, right? I mean, that's so tumbling
Yeah, it is,
literally
yeah.
is tumbling. That's tumbling. So that doesn't make any sense. So an odd choice of words. Also, no proof that the blood ever tumbled. So, if we're going to break it down, the way a lawyer needs to break it down, no one ever testified to the blood tumbling at any given moment. And I'm saying that sort of out of jest, right? But the reality is that it didn't. Like nobody ever testified that there was tumbling blood in the back of the van. Not a single person.
Well, I'm just
Yeah.
trying to figure out. So
Rosalio
sorry.
did threaten to break into Zach's van in response to being told that Zach broke into his vehicle. Yes,
That's
and
good
was
to know.
given Zach's address. Yes, and GPS data showed Rosalio at Zach's address. Yes, all of that occurred. Yes.
And it's all covered in the website as well. So make sure you have a look at that. The one thing that I can't figure out is if it tumbles out. So I would imagine it as the logistically of what you said earlier on, and I could be wrong here. If he put, if Zach somehow miraculously was able to put the whole rug into the minivan, so it's overstretched to to the front, to the back, fine. But the spec was basically just behind Zach's seat, wasn't it? Somewhere in the middle there. No, where was it?
The spec is by the rear hatch on the passenger side, about a foot off of like the floor of the van. So
Yeah,
so it's on, like if you're looking into the back of the van, it's on the right
yeah, I'm with
side.
you.
So it's actually, I mean, this is a mirrored camera, but it's on the right side of the opening. So then you'd be looking in the back and it's on the right about a foot and a half up on that back console, on the plastic flashing on the back side of the van where that hatch closes. So just inside the back hatch on the right side of the opening to the back of the van. So so
It's
yeah,
here
in the
somewhere.
rear carpet area, the spec is like way down. You can on the other side, on the passenger side, back there, like
Yeah,
not on the floor.
passenger for me is this side.
Ah, yes, yeah, you and you Brits and your crazy backwards cars. Uh,
Yeah.
because there's like two countries in the whole face of the planet that do it backwards. So you're the odd people out. Uh, uh,
Ah,
so yeah, on that side, on
around there.
American passenger side of the van, right back there.
Fine.
Though A2, so A1 is the spec. So A1
Yeah,
is the spec. You see that right there.
yeah,
A2
A2.
is on the other side, and it's a dragging reddish brown substance on that other console. That's there too. There's a bunch of different spots of this reddish brown stuff around the van. It's there. It's on all kinds of stuff. What is it? They never determined what it was. It tested negative for blood. Period.
Didn't, but yeah.
Well, I mean, being from Wales, you're still British, aren't you?
Yeah, yeah, but I'm Welsh, so but I like the fact that she calls you a dork.
Well, I thought British was a reference to the entire United Kingdom, and
It is, but we're trying to break away from Britain, from England and stuff, you see.
I mean, I don't
So
blame you, but though Wales has been
no,
trying to do that for millennia, and it hasn't turned out very well, has it?
not yet. Not yet anyway, not yet. Not yet at
Scotland
all.
tried that a couple of times, and that didn't end well either. So,
No, and they're trying again. They're trying again now, so yeah. Jesus. That's why I lived in Scotland, actually. I lived in Scotland for a part of my life, and then
did you?
yeah, yeah, for a bit, worked up there for some university, and then
Oh,
back to
sweet.
Wales now. So,
All right.
um, right, we got
So,
that. Everything.
so you can see that there's this reddish brown substance, that there's multiple spots that are marked A1, A2. There's the spot on the visor marked with an X, or on the steering wheel marked with an X up front. There's also a spot on the visor up front. There's a spot on the floorboards on the passenger side. So there's a bunch of marks of this reddish brown substance all over the place. So we've got miraculously tumbling blood. Also, keep in mind that in this circumstance, if the blood were to be tumbling to get on that back pillar, that means that the head had to be in the back of the van. Rosalio had to be loaded feet first. There was
Yeah.
no blood evidence outside anywhere.
Yeah.
None.
Okay.
So
Also,
having to manipulate an almost 300-pound man into the back of the van feet first. There's no blood because head is on the ground, feet going into the van. So if you swing the feet up onto the back of the van, you grab the top of the body and you try and heave that up, no blood left on the ground anywhere. None. No evidence. So no evidence of this man being loaded like this.
so I'm trying to get my mouse cursor to a because you Americans are a bit backwards. Well, some of you would it. Oh, that was a joke, by the way, in case anyone takes me seriously. Um, why is the cursor not work? Oh, jeez. Right. So, but would it not make sense though that his head? Come on, cursor, work for me, baby. No, it doesn't work. Right, would it not make sense as we look at it now, left-hand side, so where A2 is, would it not makes more sense that the head would be leaning towards A2 and his legs, yeah, his head's there and his legs are diagonal towards the passenger seat.
I mean,
That
that
would
might
be
make
make
more
more logic.
sense. But there's a space between the two captains' chairs up front where you could have slid the carpet in between, for
Fine.
the all intents and purposes, and maybe it was crooked from the center over. That is also plausible. But there's no evidence
Mm,
of that was ever presented in the court, and no evidence of it whatsoever. So because there's no carpet fibers at all in the van that were located, no other evidence, no hair of Gutierrez. There's actually no saturated blood in any of the hardware in the back of the van. None of that has any of Gutierrez's blood. So it's still a very important an important aspect that there was no blood evidence in any preliminary testing
yeah.
that was testified to by by Juliana Vila, the third expert from the crime lab. Juliana Vila said that in their preliminary testing, there was no blood in
No
the
blood.
van, no blood. That's really important to recognize that nothing tested for positive for blood with phenolphthalein because that was the first round of testing. So nothing tested positive with phenolphthalein. Nothing tested positive for luminol. Nothing
Luminol, yeah.
did. So with both of those substances, phenolphthalein turns like bright pink. Luminol glows with a black light. Nothing tested positive.
Jesus. Okay. I'll just shout out here for Erin. You know Erin Hack? Erin Hack's big supporter of Zachariah as well. She's got her own taco. Erin has on this channel. Erin Taco. This she has it. She likes to wind me up. I'm from England. The
I
little
mean, it's too bad that she didn't send you a taco that you could eat.
yeah. I've never tried. 2 weeks ago was the first time I've ever tried a taco.
What?
First time ever. Yeah,
Ever?
first time ever. Yeah, first time ever.
You just hang out
I'd
and eat
never.
haggis? Like, what do you do?
Haggis Scotland, yeah. No, I'd never tried it. I've had fajitas, burritos, never
Huh.
had haggis. Not haggis, bloody hell. Never had taco. I ate it for the first time on stream, and I'm gonna try country gravy as well next. So apparently that's a thing in America. So yeah, that's what's next.
All right.
Right.
Right? You wore
Right?
maybe the steel-toed boots that you borrowed from Grandpa working at the tree farm just a day before. Maybe you wore those.
Maybe.
Off. You put on some
Another
other
one?
footwear. You, of course, have now taken off your gloves. You've taken off that outer garment, that same plaid, sort of very light, sort of outer garment that both your daughter and Sadie say was the last thing they saw you wearing in the late afternoon on the very same day that Rosalio goes missing. So just about that they saw you wearing about 4 hours before, 4.5 hours before Rosalio's death. You take those items off, and of course, you package them up. This is your plan. You're not going to operate your vehicles with those things still on you. You've planned this.
So now he's changed as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so he's done all this crime scene prep, and he had time to change before he left. before he operated his vehicle.
Yeah.
Here we are.
This is the reason I'm spoiling about this. This is the exact thing with Brian Kohlberger. He had 8 minutes apparently to alleviate all 4 victims, and then where's his clothes? But FBI have always said, no matter if you strip off naked, there will always be loads of blood left in the car or in the van. Nothing, nothing for Zachariah and for Brian as well. So
They had no DNA expert
unbelievable.
discuss how changing clothes would alleviate this issue. Nobody ever testified to that.
Well, no one testified at all. They just made shit up. They just put them in hotels and put them on 40-hour courses, apparently. So, and now you're an expert. So,
And so, an investigation that is hoping that you were not a planner, an investigation that was expecting that you were not prepared for those type of basic things, is never going to detect you in that situation. Right? Only things that are going to detect you
right.
are the things you could not have planned for.
So now he says, well, the investigation never would have expected you to try and cover your tracks from committing this crime. That's what he just said. Just so we're
Yeah.
clear, he just
Bullshit.
says that the investigation, the investigators would not have expected that he would have tried to cover up his own involvement in the crime. What does that say about Kenosha PD? Michael Gravely's faith in the investigative abilities of the Kenosha PD. Really wrap your head around that.
Yeah. Yeah.
KPD
Yeah.
didn't expect you to try and get away with committing this crime. What? What the hell is this guy talking about?
that. Yeah. No, that doesn't make any sense. It's as if he's in a world of his own, Gravely.
Another planet. Doesn't even make sense. So he legitimately just bolstered the defense's argument that the police did an inept
Job. Yeah.
job, that they didn't do their jobs to the fullest in investigating this crime and actually figure out who committed it.
What was that? I got what you said. I got what you said, right? But I'm still trying to comprehend what you just said because you're right. It. He's just thrown the Kenosha PD into the. I don't know what he was say.
Threw him under the
Down
bus.
the threw him in the bus. But he still stood there going, but even though they've done a shit job of it, and actually they didn't really investigate, I still know, right? Right? I'm telling you, there's no one else that could have done this, right? It would have been only Zach that could have done it, right?
Yeah,
That's it.
we have Lou in the chat. Lou is she does like psychological analysis and stuff.
Oh,
She
Lou, yes.
she did a phenomenal breakdown of Dr. G's bullshit
Yeah.
that he put out on the internet about Zach being a psychopath. And we appreciate that, Lou. But Lou would be the person that I would turn to in a situation where the DA is constantly saying right. I mean, do we have a count on the number of rights that he has as well? I mean, this is something that's obscene. How many times does he try and like people were commenting that I used the word beseech, that he tries to beseech the his credibility with the jury. It's really interesting that not only does he use maybe, probably, and all these other phrases that imply doubt in his own argument, but then he doubles down on this game of trying to coax them into comfort and believing the bullshit that's coming out of his mouth. This is his closing statement. This is the game that he plays, while using language that attempts to dodge making overt statements of false fact. He attempts to, but he doesn't avoid them all.
No. But he gets away with it. That's the infuriating part. You
Yeah.
know? Right, I think I lost my part. Yeah,
You
hang on,
can
where are we
finish
at?
your cleanup, again, bagging all the items, again, being meticulous about making sure that you don't leave any evidence. And of course, at your own house, over the next couple of days, you must run that fire pit and start to destroy some of the rest of the evidence. Because even when you do the cleanup, right? Even when you do the
Right?
cleanup, you are
Right.
concerned that maybe the personal clothing
Maybe.
that you are wearing will somehow be able to be tied to you, right? If
Right?
somebody finds some of this stuff in a dumpster or buried somewhere or somewhere controlled, you can't leave your clothes, which is certainly going to have your DNA on it, right? Your pants,
Right?
your socks, the boots you were wearing. You've got to get rid of those in a way that is DNA proof. And you know how you do that? You do that with fire. You burn those things so that no DNA will ever exist.
Where's the expert that talked about the destruction of DNA through fire?
And also, does boots get destroyed in fire? I
They
don't
found
think it.
they found steel toes, the remnants of steel toes that they claimed in the fire pit. So they found
Yeah,
the toe part, but they didn't talk about any other pieces of the boots. So
right.
in this, he's claiming that, well, there's no evidence, so meticulous planning. No evidence. So he was so good at avoiding any of the expectations that the police would have had, as far as what a criminal would normally do to commit this crime. Right? It's maddening.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine that. So I'm interrupting there now because it is now. We've
1
got
p.m. my time.
nearly. Yeah, we've nearly got an hour left on this video.
I know.
Uh, so we're not going to be able to get through it at all.
No, that's how obscene it is. So
Yeah.
I mean, go ahead. You don't need to stop every time I cite a right or a maybe, but
No, but I enjoy it. I enjoy it and getting your insight. My proposition to you is if you'd be willing to come back on in a few weeks or something.
sure, we could do a stream where we, I mean, follow it up and finish it. I guess it's a two-hour two party.
Yeah, I'd rather do that. Yeah, to a party. I'd rather do that
Yeah.
because I don't want to miss out on some of these things and rush it. If you're up for that, that is, it's your time and everything. But if you're happy to do another stream, then I'd happily do one with you. Um,
I've got school starting in a little over a week, so my time is going to be under a little bit higher demand, and
yeah,
I'm potentially doing another interview with a different law and crime program. So I'm not sure how that's going to fall into to my
fine.
timetable, but I'll keep you posted.
Yeah, I'd rather do that, and I think people can wait. Do you know what I mean? Even if it's another bit or whatever, I think that's probably the best
Yeah,
bit.
you're gonna have to post
Um,
this as part one then,
part
and
one.
then
I will do
yeah,
that.
and bookmark where we left off. But we can go for a little bit longer. I've got a little bit more
Yeah,
time.
fine. Okay.
Okay, so that's why the burning pit is going on in the rainstorm for a couple of days.
Also, no
Because you're
proof of a
burning steel
Rainstorm.
rainstorm for a
boots.
couple of days.
Yeah.
I wish that they had refuted that by citing the volume of rain that fell in Mequon versus Kenosha. I wish that they had actually cited that. They didn't. I've looked it up independently, and they got drizzles. I mean, it was not a rainstorm, so that's a misrepresentation of fact.
But
There's no proof of a rainstorm.
why are
They,
you looking it up independently?
I,
Why did not come in?
I have no idea. Maybe because they would have had to like call a meteorologist or something. I have no idea. But uh, the reality is that there was no evidence of a rainstorm in the days following this. It rained that Sunday, and then it misted a couple of times after that in Mequon. Now, I personally just the other week just burned a bunch of foliage. I cut down a tree in my yard and I burned the
Yeah,
canopy. It was mostly dead in my fire pit. Well, we had like an inch of rain or half inch of rain that came in. It rained very hard, for an hour, maybe 2 hours, while the coals were still hot. I went out, then after the rain passed, and they were still smoldering.
yeah,
So like actively smoking, even with that much rain. So they're claiming that, he maintained this active fire pit. But if you get a fire really hot and it has a lot of ash on top,
Yep.
it prevents it from saturating because the coals are so hot that the water evaporates before it penetrates the fire pit. It needs to super saturate the fire before it goes through. I'm no fire expert, but maybe they could have had an expert in fire specifically and how long it takes coals to cool down to actually testify to exactly when that fire would have been started. That was never presented.
So many things, man. So many things. Jen saying I'm standing as his spokesperson. Jen, anytime you can step in, no worries. Um, and Sol just said that you killed someone. Sal just said that you killed
No,
someone.
there's no buttons in my fire pit. I'm free.
Right.
And we find at the very top of that burn pile steel toes and shoelaces, right? You burn your underwear,
Right?
and we find a fragment of your underwear. You burn your jeans, and we find some buttons. And in fact, you might even burn two pairs of jeans, right? Because you might have changed jeans once
Right.
from the
Right.
time you committed the
You
offense,
might have.
and then when you did the cleaning of the van.
You hear that? You might have burned two pairs of jeans.
Yeah, might have. Might have. You might have done a lot of things. You might
You
have.
you
Might
might
gone.
have burned two pairs of jeans. Right?
Hey, he might have pissed in the burn pit. Do you know what I mean? Just because he could be asked to go to the toilet. He might have, right? Did he stay there all that time? Did he take a piss in there? Did he? Do you know what I mean? It's just like all these rights
None of
be
the
read.
none of the items that they located in the burn pit, none of the items, to be clear, not a single one, not the sock, not the underwear, not the steel toes, none of it had any DNA of Rosalia Gutierrez on it. Not a single piece.
There you go. There you go.
Van in that second situation. So you might even you might even need to burn multiple pairs of jeans, and you burn socks, right? The ones you wore when you wore those boots. And so at the very top of your
Something happening.
Jen brought me lunch because
Oh, that's
she loves
nice of
me.
her.
I'll
Yeah,
hold
she
off on
does
the
love you.
sandwich because we're going through this still. But
Oh, you're all good. You can eat. Do you know what I mean, man? It's all good.
no, it's
fire
fine.
pit, there's bleach, and there's those kind of clothes consistent with that set of garments that you could have. Okay,
That you could
those
have.
things are found in the fire pit.
Could
have.
have.
I want to
That's
talk about some of the major
statement of doubt.
witnesses.
Guaranteed that he's a guy. Let's pee on fire. You would. I would anyway. I'll be pee on it. Like, can I get it? Can I hose it down?
Yeah, why wouldn't you
Um,
pee on your fire when it was burning down? That's
Jen's
fire
a
smart
death.
habit. You're trying to
Yes.
prevent the fire from spreading. You're putting it out.
I can imagine running around, stop it from spreading. Jesus.
In this case for just a second, because I think that their I want to have you hear me talk about sort of how I think they responded on the stand and where they sit in
Sort
terms
of.
of your ability to adopt what they have
Sort
said.
of. Why did he say sort of? I want you to hear me talk about how sort of they testified
Yeah.
on the stand. What the fuck does that mean?
Yeah. Yeah. It's infuriating because you don't pick it up at the time, but now we pick up all these things. Jesus. Oh, what was saying? Was she only you can prevent forest fires? Yes. That's true, Jed. That's true. 19, I think now. Yeah, I mean, we lost, No town said they heard steel-toed boots or saw a naked man in the parking lot. That's so true, though. So
Yep.
he discarded all his clothes, but no one was naked. And you know for a fact, right, that if you've heard noises like apparently was claimed, people could be in the windows going, "Oh, what's happening?" I think you hear any rugs or whatever. You got to hear noise. You 100%. You got nosy neighbours that could be peeping out to see what happens. 100%. Jesus.
So
Um,
you're telling me that you're going to strip naked in a rainstorm in a parking lot?
Yeah.
Because that's what the DA presented. A rainstorm, a torrential
Rainstorm.
rainstorm. He stripped naked in the parking lot.
The more we look into this, the more bizarre. It's not a joke. Obviously, it's not a joke because Zachariah is actually in prison for this. But this is like a sketch.
Right.
There's no way this could be true. Do you know what I mean? Any of this stuff. This is what you would
Yeah.
present to prospective jurors to say, look, I don't need to tell you, but if a lawyer is saying all this garbage, then don't obviously he's stretching. It's like one of those like these are the worst lawyers you can have. They lie in and stuff like that. But
Yeah. Yeah, we might
it's
as well be watching Monty Python Fish Slap right now. Like
yeah,
legitimately, it's just asinine the kind of crap that he came up with.
you know. Um, right, sorry, I'm getting
So I want to
distracted
speak
by
first
things.
about Sadie Beecham, okay? Who was, I think, in every way you heard her, right, on the stand.
Right?
Uh,
And okay, both of those
confronted on
are interchangeable.
cross-examination in her.
Yeah, straight after each other, right?
First, I want
Okay.
to talk about Sadie Beecham. Okay? Okay? And then immediately follows it up with a right?
Yeah,
Both
yeah,
are they're interchangeable in how they're used in language.
Texts on the phone when you heard recordings of her. She is part scared, part at wit's end. She is frustrated. There are times she is trying to appease and make
And now
nice
he's inserted
with
himself
the defense.
as an expert in psychology to say that she was absolutely scared. She's frustrated, right? He has now inserted himself as an expert in analyzing her, like in linguistics, and analyzing her language and tone, stating she was absolutely scared and frustrated and all these other things. He is stating that.
yeah. I'd like to see this guy's CV because he's an expert in a lot of stuff, apparently.
Yeah, he sure is.
He knows nothing. Yeah. I thought she was supposed to be terrified of him. Good catch.
Yeah.
Good catch,
How
Jen.
how are you part scared? How are you part scared? You're not
Yeah.
all the way scared?
But she school steak or Sue. Obviously, he did because I knew he was bad, but I didn't know he was this bloody bad. You
It's
know?
bad. It's bad.
Yeah. But I genuinely didn't think it was this bad, if I'm being honest.
Yep.
Defendant.
It's not
There are
getting any
times
better.
she's trying to just man.
Well, this is why I want to play it all back because if this is bad, what else are we going to pick up on when I watch it all again? Do you know what I mean?
Well, you can
With a second
watch
pair
all
of
of
eyes.
his little baby tantrums and his angry water drinking. It'll be great.
Yeah, that's the part I'm looking forward to. You know.
Manage a conversation, just trying to say anything she can to end the endless string of texts or end the hours-long phone calls.
What, like,
And in the
wait,
meantime, there are
wait. Here's an example of how you end an endless stream of texts and phone calls. Don't call me again. Go away. Leave me alone. I'm not interested. It's over. Right? All of
Right.
those perfect examples on how to set a boundary with someone and make sure that they understand that you're uncomfortable with their communication. None of those were presented. Not a single one. But we did get jewels like "Good night, Z-Bear XOXO.
Yeah.
Why don't you come over for some Panda Express? Why didn't you spend the night?" That's what we got.
Okay, Zenith's leaving now, so thank you, Zenith, for being here. Enjoy your lunch. Um, thank you for leaving now. 'Cause now we can talk about you now once you've
Yeah.
gone. So I'll ask
I'll
loads
talk
of
to you later,
questions about
sis.
Zenith. But no, thank you for being here, Zenith. Really appreciate you being here. How long do you want me to play this on for, mate?
Uh,
'Cause you've got to get ready. Do you know what I
yeah,
mean?
we
You've
got
got to
like
leave.
a half hour.
Half hour, fine.
Yeah.
family issues, right? There are a couple things happening in their
Right.
lives which do not allow her to cut off all contact with the defendant, do not allow her to have some rule that says, when I tell you you're not welcome in my house, that means you can never, ever be over here because I need help sometimes with my daughter. And so she is a woman just
three
trying
children.
to have some.
What?
He says, help sometimes with my daughter. They have 3 children.
Oh.
It's
Yeah. Do you know
it's
what?
reductive.
I did not know that until I watched the stream.
Yeah.
Of your interviews, because I didn't know anything. I thought it was just a daughter, the way that they speak throughout the trial.
No, there's 3 kids.
Mm.
It's reductive and just obnoxious, but it's fine. It's not a
It is,
false
yeah.
statement of fact.
Something of her own. She's trying to have some relationship in her life that is not about the defendant. And he deals with that with such obsession, with such hostility, with such fury, that she tries every strategy that anyone has ever come up with
Except,
to try to deal with that.
Don't talk to me. Except, I will only speak to you regarding the children. That was never that strategy was never deployed.
No.
That seems odd. And they presented even in the courtroom, Zach asking, "What are we doing here? You're supposed to be doing you, and I'm supposed to be doing me. What is this conversation?" That implies, even in their communications, that was not clear, and that Sadie was pushing for more and trying to be more involved in his love life than what he wanted.
Yeah, it seems that she wanted it all
Hmm She wanted the
on
cake
her
and
own
eat it too.
space. Yeah, she wanted everything.
Yeah.
And she wanted full control of Zach and everything. Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
And no restraining order either. No court order. None of that.
no. And this is going back to what she said about if I'm afraid of my kid's dad, he isn't coming in. Well, Zach was, allowed to steal children, everything, and go back to what Josie said, no restraining order. But yeah,
Exactly how you
stretching.
folks on the jury would expect someone who's being stalked and who is being dealt with in that way day after day to behave. Sometimes she wants to curse at him. Sometimes she wants to try to say nice things to see if that'll work. Sometimes
He's
she wants
inserted
him out of
himself
her
as an
house.
expert
Sometimes
in behavior analytics again. It's exactly how you would expect someone to behave when they're being stalked. Well, how the hell does he know? They never had an
Yeah.
expert sit down and say, well, psychologically, this is what someone would do and how they would experience it. Same thing about talking about Rosalio's reaction with anger. They didn't have anyone sit down and be like, well, that would be in a psychological basis, a psychological breakdown of someone who's being stalked. This is a normal modus operandi, a normal reaction, a normal action to take or a conversation to take.
Yeah.
They never presented an expert to actually testify to any of that. He has inserted himself as an expert witness again.
Well, this is what's scary. I joke that I'm dumb, but I believed this in the moment. I didn't believe the murder. I always said he maintained he's not a murderer. There's no evidence there. But the stalking element of what he's speaking about, I was like, well, okay. The way he was presented throughout, I was like, okay, so he is a stalker, right? Fine. But also, this is what you can see at the top here, Sol. Watch live, obsessed ex boyfriend murder trial.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's what in
Yep.
my head that
Context
he's
matters. Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. That's the onus
Jesus.
on the media. 100%.
Yeah. I mean, that's another topic altogether, but jeez.
he needs him to help on something. This is real, but it doesn't mean that it's not overwhelming, oppressive, and something that she's truly scared of. I want to talk about the daughter in this case, who now is 14 years old, right? So you heard a 14-year-old who was, I think I'm going to call her sassy.
Did you see him change his expression?
No, I'm still. See,
Now
that's
I'm going to
stretching.
talk
That's
about the daughter. Used car salesman. Watch him turn it on. He smoozes him.
Let me just go back for the right. Everyone watching now?
I want to talk about the daughter in this case.
See, look at him, turn it on,
who
schmooze.
now is
Yeah.
Look at it,
Yeah, scratches. Yeah,
gets into it.
yeah.
Used car salesman, selling hard. The daughter. This guy is gross.
And this is why people will, and a lot of people that I've spoken to, when they say about, again, Zach being guilty, is, well, the daughter said this, so he knows the jury will,
Yep.
most of them probably have children, most of them probably will feel for her and everything like that, and played up to that, basically. But what they don't understand, and I don't understand it either, but the amount of pressure your niece was under on that stand with all eyes, not just in court, but nationwide, worldwide, trying to remember stuff that happened 3 years previously. I mean, I I don't know how she is, but she must be scarred for a very long time, from that. Do you know what I mean? So to use her and to say, "Well, the daughter said it," no offense, but I applaud her for what she did because I don't think I could, but how anyway, I'm not gonna go into it because it's impossible, but how can someone that old be actually put on the stand in the first place, and then trying to manipulate that girl now through his closing speech, be, "Well, let's talk about the daughter, you piece of shit, Gravely." I mean, I
She's not
don't like that, the
misremembering. She's
manipulation.
sassy, right? She's not
Yeah,
damaged. She's sassy. She's not conflicted. This is just emotional. She's not
I
misremembering.
mean,
This is all true.
what she's had to go through, so
Right.
on a serious what she's had
I
to go
mean,
through, do you know what I mean?
Jen had, commented in here like those are like to dismiss or to reduce, you know, what occurred. Those are all
Yeah,
really real and relevant things that, need to be recognized. And I love my niece very much, and
yeah,
she has a hard road to make it through processing this emotionally, and all I can do is support her. I just
100%.
wish that the court, that these awful human beings had taken a little more care in trying to reduce the amount of damage that they did to her. They didn't.
Mm, I agree with you, and that's why my clumsy way trying to get to that, it's really hard to discuss that, but, mm, yeah, I hope she's doing okay, mate. Um, alright, let's play this.
14 years old, right? So you heard a 14
Right?
year old who was, I think I'm going to call her sassy, who was courageous, who was absolutely adamant. Ladies and gentlemen, jury, absolutely adamant about the things she told you, about things like that the back of that van was not cut out when I last saw the back of that van on the weekend of the 16th and 17th of May. Like that my father made me his spy, that he stole things from the car. All of those things she said. She was adamant about those things. When challenged by the defense, she gave extra details that she remembered, and she, in tone and in bravery, made it absolutely clear to you as a jury that she is her own person and that she knows what she is talking about. Now, is she perfect? Did she say exactly the same thing in exactly the same order as she did back in 2020? That would be impossible to do.
Oh,
As a
it's
12-year-old,
Now,
impossible to recall.
now,
It's
yeah,
impossible to recall exactly what she said when she was questioned by police immediately following this event.
yeah,
Impossible to recall. So now we've recognized that it wouldn't be possible for this young, impressionable lady. He just recognizes it, that it's impossible to recall the exact order and content of those statements. Wrap your head around that.
yeah,
The
yeah,
prosecutor just stated that, and everybody was like, great.
yeah,
Yes, I believed everything she said. What?
yeah.
But the prosecutor just said that it didn't match up to the statements in 2020.
No, it doesn't make sense. This is where I'm probably a little bit more sensitive about it. Obviously, um, no 14-year-old could ever expect to remember. This is why the whole thing's disgusting that she was
Mads,
even put through it.
the only thing that I'm willing to say about the firearm outburst is that it was a powerful imagination. There was no gun in Wisconsin. There was no threatening of her with the gun. It never occurred. It just wasn't a thing. I I don't know why she said it. I don't know why it came out. She also didn't say that Zach threatened her with the gun, for the record. Um, she just said that she was threatened with the gun, uh, and I don't know what that means. So, a lot of people took it as some sort of inference that Zach was wielding the gun and was like, "This is for you," or some shit like that. Uh, but that never occurred. I don't know where it came from. Zach has been anti-gun. He doesn't want him on his property. He doesn't want him in his house for his entire life. He's just not a gun guy. He was robbed at gunpoint when he was a teenager. He was at a party and somebody walked into the party and fired a round between his feet. He's not a pro having a gun type of guy. He just doesn't do it.
Mm,
So
yeah.
no, it just didn't happen.
And now
Sorry.
14, of course, some time has
Sorry.
passed, right? But as to everything that truly matters, you will see a couple of things that were inconsistent, and they will not be things that for you truly matter. Was she coached? Was any of what she did something where an adult has ordered her or dominated her to provide that information? I would suggest to you she's the exact opposite.
You would suggest
of the
you would
personality of
suggest that
someone.
she's the exact opposite. You would suggest that on what psychological basis? So not only did he suggest, but now he's once again, inserted himself as some sort of expert in how the power of suggestion works in a developing brain, and how being stuck with just her mother for the last 3 years might have warped or changed some of those statements. But he would
Mhm.
suggest otherwise.
Yeah. Maybe she's impressionable, considering
Even if
everything.
she's
Yeah.
stubborn, like he's inferring with this comment that he's making right now, that she's the exact opposite of a suggestible teenager. I The reality is that there's years of development there where all of those conversations surrounding this issue have been focused on Zach's guilt. Everything that that was talked about was inferring that he was guilty of these crimes. How is that not going to haunt a developing child? Ridiculous.
No, I agree. Then yeah.
14-year-old who can be coached.
Oh,
in
Jen's
terms
right.
of what
He did step around the verbiage
Yeah.
about coach. Not that she wasn't coached. He didn't claim that. He never claimed that she wasn't coached. He suggested otherwise.
Spacey, yes, she was, but I'm suggesting otherwise. Yeah. Good
Right.
catch. Mm. And then, in other words, I tried to get her to say worse.
I tried to get her to say
Doing,
what I wanted her to say.
yeah. That's why I had the 3 sessions.
So
Oh, yeah.
just
Yeah.
just like lawyer speak, breaking it down. That's he's that gross, that greasy. Yep.
exact opposite. I want to talk about Marquand Washington, the inmate who came and told you what the defendant told him when they had a cell together for about a little more than 5 weeks. And I want to contrast him with Mr. McAtee, the inmate that the defense called to talk about Marquand Washington. And I think it's constructive to talk about them together for a second, to talk about what matters in terms of your thinking about and assessing that information. So Marquand Washington knew the defendant's home was in Mequon. He knew it was a home in poor condition in a rich area. that appears to be the case. He knew details about the defendant's family that have been unchallenged in this case.
Interesting.
He knew about circumstances.
He throws subtle shade at him in that statement. A home in poor condition in a rich area. So it implies two things. One, that he's neglectful. Two, that that he lives in an affluent neighborhood. So he's someone that might be worth taking down a peg.
Is any of that true?
He lives in an affluent neighborhood. Yeah. The property values where his house is are well, and I mean it is under construction. His house needs work. Is it?
But he's
I
doing
mean,
that
it's
himself.
worse
So
now. Yeah, but he was willing to do it himself. It was an old house. It was an old house in the neighborhood. It was originally, I believe, like a barn or a grain storage building that they converted into a dwelling from the farm that was there long before it was an affluent neighborhood. Old houses in affluent neighborhoods exist, and those houses often need updating. He owns an old house in an affluent neighborhood. Does that make sense?
yeah, no, 100% makes sense. I just want to make sure that if there's even any truth in that. I don't believe anything that Gravely says.
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
me,
I mean,
so
that's fair. But yes, the neighborhood is well off. It's not the wealthiest community in Wisconsin, but it's not a
No.
poor community by any stretch of the imagination.
Of the case, which are sort of unimportant circumstances, but they're details that might lead you to understand that he has insider information. So what do I mean? Well, he says in the raid that the police found a lot of cash. The police found $47,000+ but only a little bit of weed. Okay, and sure enough, that is a summary that would be accurate in some, from some perspectives about what happened in a collateral part of the case. So these are the kind of details. He knew what his job was. He knew he had worked for, in construction and in cable.
A lot of the stuff was in the news
these
too,
are
by the
things
way.
that
was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not like groundbreaking that Marquand was aware, privy to any of this stuff.
I wouldn't be surprised if he fed. I mean, I'm speculating now, but if the Mark One didn't know anything, but this guy just told him all this stuff anyway. Do you know what I mean? So
that Marquand Washington knew about the background of the defendant. So he knew some personal facts. And then he talked about what, of course, he told him about the offense, and he told him this was a private conversation. No word was ever said to me where another person was ever present. He only told me a few of the facts. He did not outline everything that happened in the case. He also told the defendant all sorts of details about his case. You heard Marquand Washington say he's never cooperated before. So this is the first time he's ever done this. And again, that is unchallenged in this case, that he has not been a person who from a jail has ever informed on an individual before.
He informed on, he was taking a leak. They even talked about it in the courtroom. He went to take a leak while his brother and his buddy went and murdered somebody. And he rolled over on him. Yeah, whatever.
well, it's just another lie. I mean, just added to
other cooperation along those lines, where in the context of hearing something in a jail, he decided to do something with it. He also told you that if he lies, if he's caught in a lie in this case, that the agreement that he currently has will be eliminated, will be destroyed. So really, he is at huge risk if Marquand Washington decides to say anything that is false in this case. He's at huge risk.
So
he
just agreed that there was a deal.
Let's go back.
Be eliminated, will be destroyed. So really, he is at huge risk if Marquand Washington decides to say anything that is false in this case.
Oh,
that he if he lies, if he's caught in a lie in this case, that the agreement that he currently has will be eliminated, will be destroyed.
That's it.
He just agreed that he cut a deal with him.
You just said it. Well, fuck me. I didn't even catch that.
Hmm.
He just said it. What the fuck? That's just ridiculous. He's just admitted there's a deal after lying, saying under oath there's no deal. He just admitted there's a deal.
Yeah.
Motherfucker. And he gets away with it. How the hell does he get away with this? No one's going to challenge it now. There's nothing you can do to challenge that, surely, from your end. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, all it does is continue to, be a mark against Gravely, and
Yeah.
how he operates as a lawyer, as a DA.
Jesus. Okay. Good catch by you. Absolute fantastic catch that was.
So really, he is at huge risk if Marquand Washington decides to say anything that is false in this case. He's at huge risk to have everything that he's hoping for in a federal agreement be destroyed.
He claims a federal agreement, so he tries to absolve himself of it. A federal agreement.
I think that he knew he stepped in it, and he's trying to come back a little bit,
Hmm.
I mean, to absolve his mistake.
So here's the contrast with Mr. McAtee. And I think it's so helpful that you got a chance to see Mr. McAtee, because now you get a chance to evaluate what a jailhouse sort of operator looks like in contrast to what Mr. Washington gave
Contrast.
and showed you. Okay, so they're similar. They both have a federal case, right? So
Okay.
they have surface similarity. Mr. McAtee
Right.
has 11 priors.
McAtee denied
But
Gravely
Mr. McAtee,
the same deal.
Yeah,
So why?
because
So, but McAtee's a jailhouse operator, even though McAtee said no, I'm not testifying to the bullshit that you're talking about.
that came up, didn't it? In court, did you
Mhm.
get approached by? And he said, "Yes, I did get approached."
Yep.
I remember that bit. Yeah. So
Yeah, but McAtee is jailhouse operator. When he said no, I don't have anything to say. McAtee's a
bloody
jailhouse
hell.
operator. So he used circular logic to try and redefine the two roles to the opposite of what they really are.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So Munch has everything to gain and little to lose by making up stuff. Yes.
Yep.
What are we looking at for time for you?
Not a lot more.
No, fine.
Yeah, we
We
should
can cut
probably
a
wrap
year
it
if you want. Yeah.
up.
Well, no,
Yeah.
wait.
But I mean, just like we've been doing this for 3.5 hours, and
Yeah.
in this, I'm not sure what the timestamp was where you started, but we really only got like 20, 30 minutes into Gravely's closing statements, which lasted 90.
Hmm.
Now, granted, like the first half hour, 45 minutes of our stream, we were talking about other stuff and
Yeah.
presenting, the lead in for this. But just to really wrap your heads around this, on how dishonest this closing statement was, it is mind-boggling. Because where do you have the end of his? Yeah,
154. 154.
154ish.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
so 154, we're at an hour 8, so we've got 45-ish minutes left. So we're about halfway through, just under halfway through this closing argument, and it's taken us legitimately almost 3 hours to get through that, because of the amount of misrepresentations that he presented, the amount of lies that he told, the amount of doubts that he cast on his own statements, and the amount of times that he's presented himself as an expert in several different fields. So for those of you out there that are breaking this down, learning to speak lawyer, these subtleties, these twists of language, if you present an in absolute, like something that's not absolute, something that has some sort of shadow of a doubt, you aren't obligated to then see the the fallout from that from any sort of higher regulatory body. And so he very specifically uses things like "I suggest" in those situations. He sidesteps, he pussyfoots around those moments, trying to avoid being caught in the lion's maw. And this is something that you really all do need to be aware of. This is how a dishonest prosecutor works. This type of verbiage, how they're presenting it. He doesn't actually present the fact, he presents a suggestion of a fact. That should be a massive alarm bell in anyone's head if they're ever a juror on a trial. In any closing argument, if you have a prosecutor suggesting to you, that is a red flag.
Yeah. I use pussyfoot as well. I use that word as well. I love it. So not just Sol, I love that word as well. Sol's got to go. I'm going to fly out as well. So thank you very much, my friend. That was excellent. Let me know when you're free for a second, whenever that may be. I think everyone's enjoyed. I don't think we could do this without you. To me, you pick up on so many different things. I know Jen probably could, but that's probably the only other person that
Yeah.
could. Um, um, but yeah, and thank you so much for the chat as well. Obviously, the tag at the top, I put the links in the description box for everyone watching on replay. Thank you all in chat. Keep us going. Thank you, Just Jurors. 21. We're at 21. I've marked that down now. So when we get resume, we're on 21. Um, have a blessed day to you all as well. I've
Thank
got to
you.
go because Sol really has to go to work. So thank you guys. Appreciate you. Love you. See you soon. Take care. Signs up. Love you all.